The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are an awakening center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, a learning experience for all ages. Tonight, our National Grand Sheikh, Tarik Bey, and I are pleased to be back with you again to present Spellbound, Breaking the Chains of Connotative Slavery. But before we begin, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Wow. Welcome, 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 Grand Sheikh.
Islam.
Islam. Happy Holy Day. It's so good to see you again. How are you?
Fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you very well.
I'm just making sure I got off because I had it on mute for a minute.
Nope, yeah. I hear you well, hear you fine. Greetings to all of those in the chat, all of those who are tuning in today. We are excited and happy to be back with you. This is our second time in 2 weeks. We probably are not, Grand Sheikh, we're probably not, while we're waiting for you to, get back up to speed. We're not going to be doing twice a month, but we are going to try to do the first Friday of the month, as today is the first Friday. And until you're feeling, well enough to
maintain the standard.
Yeah, because I heard you kind of slept for a couple days after our last show. I guess it
wasn't because of that. It's just that I'll be up all night all the time.
Well, you can't do that. Thank you all. Thank you in the chat. Thank you for the comments in the chat. We're happy to be here, and we are really excited about the topic. Actually, Grand Sheikh put me on assignment this week. He had me studying some stuff. He said, go read this and go read that and go research the other. And so so that I could be a able-bodied participant in this conversation tonight. And tonight we're talking we're talking really about what amounts, I guess, to jurisdiction and status. And so I want to open up by saying connotative slavery is the invisible prison of legal language, misapplied identity, false jurisdiction, and we're not just physically controlled. Is that right, Grand Sheikh? We're spellbound, as we call this. Yeah, we're spellbound by symbols.
Mental slavery.
Right, symbols, words, and fraudulent contracts that we never knowingly sign. So a lot of times we don't, even going back to the birth certificate, which is the first contract that we didn't sign, but our mothers unknowingly signed us away and made us wards of the state. But I've come to realize as I'm studying and so forth that, and I put this in a meme the other day, that they've taught us, to argue over politics and race and rights, while the real issue of jurisdiction goes unchallenged.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. Yeah. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And we hope that you will join into the discussion in the chat. And we ask that you be mindful. I'm just giving you some rules of the game, so to speak, how we're going to do things tonight. If you have a question, I would ask that you not put it in 10 times. That's kind of a disrespectful, and it might get you blocked. So I'm telling you at the head, up at the front. Hopefully I'll see your question and bring it up so that we can get an answer, if we will, but I will not tolerate just flooding the line with the same question that you copied and pasted. The other thing that will get you blocked is disrespect of the others in the chat with you, and disrespect of the hosts. So or guests, if we had some guests, but it's just us tonight. So we're asking that you be respectful, not only of yourself and those that are in the chat, but of us, so that we can have a great time. With that, Grand Sheikh.
Mm-hmm. Islam. Yeah. Now, one of the things that we want to remind everybody is that civics is a science that treats of government, civilization structure, or what you call bodies politic. And it's ancient. It's not modern, and it's not contemporary. And because of the training of our people under the animal husbandry, the general narrative, because of lack of exposure, has been our people accrediting those principles with the Europeans because we've been under occupation. But those principles are ancient, from the ancient world. And even when, like say, if they're talking even in the ancient Coptic, or what they would call the Heliotech, which the most of people are trained to refer to as the Bible, and they're talking about kings and queens and houses. Now, when they say the house of Daoud or something like that, they're talking about family line and estate all at one time. So if they say the house of David or something like that, or the house of Jacob, you're talking about the family line and the estate generationally all together. And jurisprudence is the positive law principles by which hereditaments are governed, dealing with descendancy. And so the rules of law, or what is known as positive law, and maxims, what is referred to as maxims, are those principles that are as close as they can be to the laws of nature, that hold within themselves no bias, if you get the point. The natural law, or when you hear also when people say divine law or nature's God, they're talking about those principles. Now, and one of the things also, Dr. G, as we were talking earlier, so that people have a comprehension of why you even chose this subject. I mean, we're always doing it anyway, but
right.
Is because we need to aid our people into demonstrating naturally in our everyday conversations competence in our civil affairs, because if in the reality for the different on the different venues, even organizations that our people have participated in or become a party in, or even try to establish relative to rights, like our people are dealing with rights, whether they're dealing with the people's rights or women's rights, man's rights, or what they call civil rights, or inheritance rights, or property rights, or land rights, or controversy, all of those come under civics. And because our people have been actually improperly, abused with the education system, when things are not given to you as you're growing up, you don't miss them, so you don't recognize the handicap, if you get the point. And because by basic nature, our people are generally very intelligent people. But it's just like if they don't teach you how to count, you don't know when somebody's cheating you. But it doesn't make you dumb. True. If you've been miseducated, if you get the point.
Yes.
No different than most of our people are not aware that, in fact, they have yearly conventions on education where they plan connotative linguistics to introduce into society for control purposes. And so people, sociologists, and people in what they refer to as the educational systems are well aware of that. And so they keep up with those things. And that's operating on an international jurisdictional basis. And I know that most of our people aren't even aware of that. No different than a lot of the people think that a lot of the fad language that is rooted in certain communities, and particularly ours, think that all of it comes from us, not knowing that a lot of us interjected. No different than many of the generations, say the last two generations, be thinking that hip hop belongs to them, not knowing that the Khazarians been controlling it and interjecting connotative linguistics into it for a control for socialization engineering. But they don't look at it from that perspective because most of the artists are our people, and so they have the misconception that it belongs to us. The principle of it does, the root of it does,
yeah.
But what they've been given in these last couple of generations is actually mind control and has negative structures rooted in it in order to actually break our families up and also to feed the penal system. And so on the surface, a child growing up admiring artists logically don't see that. And even when they're looking at the Hertz, the musical Hertz, the sentence structures, the subject matters, all of those things. I'm not getting into that, but I'm just saying, presenting that as an example that is easy to look at.
Well, before you go too much further, what you said about, the language and so forth, I saw a video a few days ago. I'd seen it maybe last year sometime, but it popped back up again the other day. And I believe it was a Dane Callery video, and he had a quote or a little excerpt from, you remember was she an anthropologist or whatever, Margaret Mead?
Yes.
And Margaret Mead was basically talking about, they don't teach Americans other language because they say, once you learn another language, you begin to question the meaning of the words in your own language, and you start to think critically. And they said that's dangerous to a system that's built on deception. And she used, for example, a pencil, and she said, this is not a pencil, but we tell you it's a pencil. In other countries or other places, that what we call a pencil is not called a pencil. But if that's what we are told or taught that it is, then that becomes our indoctrination. But the reason, there are other folks that can in melanated people too, that fluently speak several languages because they are not necessarily in a structure that limits what it is they can learn for the purpose of expanding their awareness and expanding their consciousness. It's deliberate, like she said, she admitted it's a system built on deception.
Mm-hmm. And and back to what we always remind people, and just like when prime ministers are teaching the children in school, in the more school for children. One of the first things over the years that she's done, and we've always said, is for even when you're bringing people into the conversation, remind them to read the philosophy page of the General Education Board's because they very often have the tendency to think that we're just trying to influence them to a biased position that we may hold against the corrupt system, not recognizing that what we're talking about relative to the system on a negative mind control level is absolutely true. And they're so confident that our people don't read and can't read when they do read that they even publish it. And yet you'll see our people over generations going to PTA meetings, parent teachers meetings, for years, to their children grow up and have children and talk and have the conversations of they're trying to make sure that the curriculum is good for the children in school and stuff like that. And not knowing that these people are laughing in their faces because it's right there on the philosophy page. And they spend years of dressing their children, preparing their children, delivering their children to their own enemy. And they publish it right on the face, what they're going to do to the children. And they won't even read that.
Let me share that. I know we've read it before, but let me share that. This was their 1913 publication.
Yeah, but that's 1902 when they founded it. Yeah, but
okay, but this is coming from something that they did printed in 1913, and it's the same thing.
Look at that. Yeah, but I'm just saying, look how it correlates with Jekyll Island.
Well,
time-wise, when they did that. Go ahead, Dr.
Okay, so what it says is, in our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility in our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple, as well as a very beautiful one: to train these people as we find them, to train them as we find them, to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm.
And then how often have they written, even at with the early stages, and not just limited to him, when he says, I don't want thinkers, I want workers.
Right.
And things like that. And yet you'll see parents get so frustrated when they see the problems that the children are having. And many of them are not even aware that some of the problems that the children have, including dyslexia, is part of the mind control, and they think it's something wrong with the children. And that's part of them messing with the mind, the subconscious contradiction. You know what I mean? And they don't understand how powerful it is that they're actually, that's why they work on the children at a very early age. And this is also why under the issue of sanctum jurisdiction, why they would even legally, not lawfully, punish parents who didn't send their children to school because they're considered state property. And like you don't see it much like they did it years ago, where they had truant officers.
Yeah,
literally. And if the child didn't go, they would literally come to the house and take the child, and if the parent resisted, they'd lock them up or citate.
So I know, like back then, one way of incorrectly felt that, they care about the children's education. No, they cared about the children's indoctrination.
Exactly.
And they wanted to make sure that, especially in that first, formative years, up to 7, when they said, one of the popes said, give me the child. What does it says? The first 7 years, and I'll show you the man. In other words, train up a child. Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. In other words, there's a time when the child is open, to more molding and indoctrination in the first 7 years. That's why they got them all on these video games, having with
Training.
now they're training them to be insensitive to killing and all of this, because they see it on the games, and then they go back the next day and the thing gets up again and they can live to die another day. But that's not reality.
Yes, mind bending. Just like you do a tree,
right?
Because the principle is still the same, and this is back to what biological bending, molding, like they say, molding.
Well, that's what they do to what do you call bonsai trees. I went to some training years and years ago in Texas, and they used the bonsai tree technique as an example of how we can take the minds of other people. They use the tree because you can take a mighty oak, and when it's growing up, if you keep twisting it, bending it, shaving the top off, which could be symbolic of cutting off the mind to learning new things, you could stunt the growth of a mighty oak into something that you can hold in the palm of the hand. The same way they do with elephants. So you tie a very strong rope around the ankle of a baby elephant and tie it to something that it can't get away from, because it's so big and it's small. But when it's older, you can put a string around its ankle and it won't go anywhere because it's been molded to think that it can't.
And and this is back to why we tell people, just like when Brother Dane was mentioning anthropology. Now, so civics on a larger scale, anthropology deals with civilization. So anthropology deals with different pedigrees of humans, their travail on the firmament of Midgard, and the imprints that they make on the land, the uses of resources, and their organized structures in governments, i.e., that's called anthropology. So that's still part of civics. And the things that our people, concern themselves with, they're many of them are not aware that they're held as incompetent because they're talking or speaking with passion, usually addressing sincerely but incompetently the social, civic, and economic problems that we're having. And then they will use the corrupted connotative linguistics trained to the people in school. And because they've given them pieces of paper, calling them degrees, they assume that they have comprehension of the language forms. And this is again why they are constantly interject or want to control the narrative, because the art of the politics is they set the foundation in corruption, and then the art of the politics is management of it. But for the most part, the people are self-replicating. And by them not knowing that this is planned, they just think it some of the problems that we're having in our families, including to break up the families, the gender wars, why families are broken, why relationships don't work. They think that's what they think is Black culture, not even knowing that Black is also part of the connotative linguistics. And then the culture is dead culture from the mind control system. And because we've cultivated ourselves, it was planted in us, and our people start thinking that it's our culture. No, that's culture generated mainly and particularly from North America, and then exported around the world, which is again why where many of our people don't understand the rejection spirit that they sometimes experience when our people leave this area and go into other jurisdictions, and particularly with the women, because usually men are more crude in many ways, but when going into other political jurisdictions, the men usually have an easier time, and our sisters will do it, will travel and wonder why they're mistreated more. not knowing the truth of culture is that the nation is measured by the woman, and so more is expected. And so when they don't understand that the corrupt culture is really not our culture, we've been living it, but it's not our culture. And this is again why they don't teach anthropology, and that or why they don't remind our people that they're under colonial or usufructory wardship tenure operations for generations. So our people keep thinking that their thoughts are their own. No different than, as you already know, which we remind the people with some of the exposed contemporary unum sanctum operations designated in these more modern times as King Alfred and Rex 84 genocide programming. And as you can see, even in the genociding programming, with that military manual, they tell you right in the front that they're genociding the people. Just like they have the philosophy page in the General Education Board. So our people come into the society from childhood for generations and are not aware that these are not attitudes that they're running into their military operations. And one of the things by them making it available, this is why a lot of times when you'll see certain people among our own that will start say taking positions of what is considered or what is designated questionably as leadership, they will make emotional arguments, but very rarely will you see them address the philosophy page and the security page of Unum Sanctum via the contemporary rebranding, which is Rex 84 and King Alfred. And this is, again, why many of your European sociologists and politicians, whenever our people get a little bit more learning and start studying a little bit and they go at them, then you'll see them project and say things like, go to your black leaders that keep selling you back into slavery type thing, rather than take the accountability that this is the U.S. corporation policy, and these people are just overseers, if you get the point. Because their idea of the sociology now is that, the overseer paradigm, left in with manumission in 1865 type thing, when all of this stuff has been rebranded. And it's the same, it's just like most people don't know, that the current wars are extension still of the Crusades, an extension still of the Columbus operation, because they rebrand.
Which is what we talked about earlier in the week, the fact that what is has been, and it's just, like I said, they keep changing the names and rebranding it in different, generations or scenarios, but it's always a replay of what has been, and that which speaks to the fact that those who do not know the history are destined to repeat it and think it's something new. Think it's something, never before. This thing has never happened. Yes, it happened probably more than a few times. It's just that generations are cut off from that knowledge to be able to pass it on to the, coming generations. And so they get to reprogram and re-indoctrinate the newer generation with whatever it is they are going, scenario is for the times.
That's how it was institutionalized, and so it's sort of like the people think, if you change the label to the soda, this time it becomes sweet juice, if you get the point. And the next time it becomes some French name that they raised 50 times the price by changing the color of it, and it's still basic Coca-Cola or something type thing, if you get the whole point.
Absolutely.
And then again, on the other hand, by the people not knowing the real social engineering here as an operation. And whereas a lot of our people are also trained to always say racism, prejudice, racism, prejudice. See, that's the cover, right? That's the cover. And then if you ask most of them, since most of them regurgitate that mind control thing, if you ask most of them, give a background on Carlos Linnaeus and Blumenbach, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. But yet that's where that paradigm comes from. And it's no different than what we're saying, where people, if you don't know the root of a thing or the foundation of the operation, you can't fix it. And this is back to when you're looking at people among our people that boast that they love the children, that they're going to help teach the children, and they won't even deal with basic principles like that. This is why nobody respects them. And then they go to start throwing the race card around because they consider themselves intelligent. No different than you'll see people talking about our children and then calling them little black girls and little black boys, but yet they're teachers and don't even know basic etymology that black is really Middle English, derived from Old High German, and actually means pale colors and white spot. Does not mean noir, nor does it mean ebony at all, you know. And so even when these people among our own in good intentions, you know, start pretending to study anthropology, and then they start calling their own people black, then when the hybrid Europeans under colonial operations enforce the black codes, because it's a code system, then they get mad and want to march all over the place and get frustrated when they're agreeing to the black codes and then complaining about the application of them, then agreeing to be black. It's sort of like we're walking down the street and we stop at a restaurant and they got a sign in the window saying no elephants allowed. And then so our people get together and gather people around. They want to march in front of it because there's no elephants around allowed. And so they want to march and boycott, because now if they weren't elephants, it shouldn't bother them. And it's the same thing where they put signs and say no Negroes allowed, right? Now, Negro is derived from Negro Yavera Arebo, which is actually a scientific name for Anthropopithecus pongidae, which is really a gorilla. You know, and none of this stuff is not, you know, in a basic, decent, you don't even need a sophisticated Oxford or something like a basic quality dictionary. You know, Anthropopithecus, troglodyte nigger. So that's the scientific name for Anthropopithecus. Sometimes applied to also what they refer to as Paleolith or caveman. This is why, like a lot of times when you see Europeans, when they're, you know, like slurring each other, you know, like fun, or like when they're calling themselves less than civil, they refer to themselves as troglodyte. That's caveman, because the scientific name is troglodyte nigger. And that's where the word Negro was adopted into the human family.
And how many folks know that? Because you'll see Negro on.
This is what I'm saying to you.
Well, you like on a can of say black beans, you'll see Negro.
Yeah,
Negro, whatever the word for beans is, but Negro.
When you see like the like if you see you're dealing with the aqua or the marine animals and stuff, and they'll take the dark fish and goldfish, and they'll call them blackmores. You know what I mean? Now, but and then this is where some of them will say, well, Moor means black, when Moor does not mean black. Moor is short for ancient Moabite Canaanite people. That's an actual pedigree that's at the foundation of the tribes of the earth, for the most part, if you get the point. That's just general. But that's collectively the Asiatic and African tribes of the earth. This is again, like for instance, like where that surprises many of our people because of the training here. And I'll use an example, like some of us who are a little older, maybe some of the younger listeners may not be familiar, like an entertainer, Josephine Baker, right? When she got her recognition, Paul Robeson and others, they went to Europe to the very same people who the descendants are here who've been oppressing us. And even though they may have had problems here or there, they get more respect and more acknowledgement and more recognition than they did here. No different than Joel A. Rogers, one of your great scholars, right? Mm-hmm. Most of his awards were recognized on Europe, not here. Although they know that he's one of the world's leading scholars, and that many other scholars use his work and then turn around and still call our people black, knowing that they're Moors. You know, no different than like you'll see even some of the different leaders here over the years when you go back into the 1800s, like when you deal with a lot of law cases, even with the law case with what they refer to in history that they train the children, Black Bill. And this is before Lincoln was praetor for the corporation. And as you already know, he was the last Republic president of the United States. And most people, they don't even know that in school, that he was the last lawful president. And every president after Lincoln is de facto. But the case of Black Bill, 52, 53, 54, before the Dred Scott case, which was litigated and terminally litigated in 57, which is studied from around the world and among our people relative to the status of our people, but they rarely will teach them a Black Bill because the argument before the course was that he wasn't black, he was a Moor. And then as you go up into the earlier 1800s, then they start just simply calling us blacks or Indians. You know what I mean? Which is both of which are classifications. So the Indian designation comes under the War Department, you know, where they start dividing us against each other, you know, to keep us from uniting, if you get the point. But that the Indian paradigm started actually in the islands, down in
the Indies, that's
yes,
West Indies. Yeah.
And that had to do with them trying to take over the Moorish trade routes.
Yeah,
you know, and starting with them going to Madagascar, and then going to Haiti, etc. And to this day, that has a lot to do from a political perspective why Haiti is forever been suppressed. All right, because that's where they first started with the military operations, because they couldn't take over Madagascar, which was their intention. And so when you even look into the shipping logs of Europe, you'll see that the military operations of Ferdinand and Isabella, with them trying to take over the trade routes, the Pedro, who was a Moor, navigated the Nino, and instead of taking them to because they had captured, you know, him among others too, because they didn't know the seas. We knew the seas, you know, because it's part of the old empire, goes back thousands of years, and the real deal is not so much just the star navigation or the principle of the sextant and dealing with the three sisters of the stars. Is actually a water flow that actually goes like a triangle, and you can set sail properly, go get into the trench, and the water will take you here. Always did, because you got to remember the Yucatan before the great shift, cocoa plate shift, was actually right where you refer to as Algiers, Morocco, Hikupta, what they call Egypt, is right there. This is what geographically, geologically, you'll see that the geological soils, rocks, sands, and aggregate of the Florida area and the Yucatan is absolutely direct, identical to the coast of Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Egypt. You know, and it's no secret. You know, any anthropologist and geologist will tell you that that's not a secret, but people don't know that it was once together, and they will.
And isn't that the same? Excuse me to cut you wisdom, but isn't that the same with say the east coast of the U.S. of America and the west coast of Africa?
Well, that's it. That's why even though you have a lot of areas that sunk, what they call Mu and Pan in Atlantis, what they refer to Atlantis, Mu and Pan, and the shift, etc. That's why you'll see sort of like the almost matching coastlines, like if you push them together.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that goes for so many millennia. So now you're dealing with geography. That's also why they don't teach geography, because they imprint in the people's mind geographical, jurisdictional distance that is actually contemporary, but is not archaic. And when I say archaic, I'm talking about ancient beyond ancient.
Would that be not only archaic, would it not be even authentic in truth? When people are flying, I'm told that there's a lot of circling and done. You know how they say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but they do some loop. I mean, you might leave Wisconsin and want to go to California, and they may take you out to Florida and then zip you back.
Never take you direct,
right? Because they want to give the illusion of distance and separation.
Exactly. Because the real issue of the firmament.
Okay.
And that the truth of the Mapamunda that they show to the people in modern times has never been true. There's more land at Midgard than they've told the people. But in order to give support to the reconstructed history that has generally been taught, etc., they had to create the geographical falsehood as well as the pedigree falsehood, and as well as the Linnaeus phenotype psychosis in order to support the artificial race game that's been weaponized that they keep the people divided with here. No different than, for instance, and it's more recent, you know, while most of the people now that don't know the sociological and jurisdictional operations of human trafficking don't know that when they were listing people for sale in the records, Europeans were also listed as Negroes. You know, and because there's Negro first, if you get the point. But then if you just tell that truth, it doesn't follow the controlled narrative. And people who don't know the real anthropology will argue with you because it contradicts their training. However, you remove the connotative linguistics and it's right there. This is also even back to why in schools where they've trained our children under animal husbandry, that they disallow etymology dictionaries, which is why most of our people aren't familiar with them. Because I
never heard of one until, you know, I met you.
Well, yeah. Well, that's standard protocol, you know, and it's back to, like I said before, where things are around us, but unless they're put in place, it's not that we don't see them here and there. We don't relate to them for lack of exposure. You know, and like I said to you before, our people aren't dumb, and they're not ignorant. They're very intelligent, but they don't know that they've been missing things. You know, like if you don't teach people certain things, they don't know that they don't know. You know, which is why you see our people still calling themselves black and arguing with each other about it, not even knowing that it only goes back to what? Let me see, 1150 in that area. Don't even go back in language to that area. And it's actually Old High German and means pale colors. And you can take them to a child's dictionary and show it to them. And they'll argue with you because of their mind control. And then as soon as they confess it, then the hybrid or their controller, the wards, the state warships, wardens, because that's what the corporate states are, and the people are under wardship. Then when they enforce the Christian black codes on them, then they mad. But they keep agreeing to it. But they don't know consent is part of the communication. And they get emotional because their concept of what they think it is based in connotative linguistic animal training. But they don't know it's animal training. And this is what makes it difficult when people know better that's trying to teach our, and this is what they count on, that when someone tells our people the truth, they'll attack you, thinking that you're their enemy. Yeah. And of course, this kind of keeps the hybrid in power. No different than like if rather than tell the truth, the fundamentals of the anthropology of the people on the planet in group, you're Oriental or Occidental. Occidental deals with what they refer to as modern man, Paleolith, i.e., or the hybrid breed, which they refer to as troglodyte Negro. Like you go into, say, an Oxford dictionary. And this is another thing where most of the schools where our children are trained, you won't see Oxfords. And if you see Oxfords, you'll see more contemporary ones that have been heavily edited. But your older Oxford dictionary, and this is for people who have libraries, who might be listening, right? Mm-hmm. Go into your Oxford dictionary in your library, just reach behind you in your Oxford dictionary and go to hybrid and go down to entry, because you already know numerical entries. And you already know as they edit books by tradition, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, they push the denotations down into the linear entries. Whereas your older books, the denotations are at the top. The connotations are at the bottom with footnote explanations. And so you look at hybrid and you go down to about 0.8 on your linear entry, and you'll see European says, and they will have in the Oxford Dictionary, we Englishmen at best are but heterogeneous hybrids. But you won't find that in your modern dictionaries. Now, all sociologists know that, all people who are serious readers and research know that. But look how many of our people that are listed as scholars that would argue with you desperately to justify standing on that falsehood, not knowing that it's part of the mind control.
Is that a good segue to talking about Yakub?
Yes, it is.
I think it is, because when you had me researching.
Yes.
And so for those, you hear for years the big hit scientists and so forth, but I never really studied it, and I'm not sure. I know I was Prime Minister.
And that's a synopsis. But right. One of the things I wanted to mention.
I didn't see that particular document that you told me about. So this particular document that I came across actually was coming from a different source. And in that one, they were given credit for that story coming from the Nation of Islam. And I remember the other day we were talking.
This. The hybrids tell the story in a movie that they made. And the movie that they made, one of them is called Frankenstein. Another movie that they call is Dr. Moreau's Island.
Yeah, the island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah. Now, so people who can read know that Moreau is French for Moor.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that the Dr. Moore's Island, or the Moors Island, Island of the Moors.
Island of Dr.
And
Moreau.
what is that? That was biological heterogeneous experimentation.
Right. So when I was studying that, I couldn't see anything about why he would want to create something opposite of the original people to oppose the original people.
Now, on the surface, your rationale, which is logical, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once you go now, if you go, then you go into the ancient Moabite history, because remember, the Moabite history and Moorish history are one. Moorish is contemporary under the patriarchy. Moabite is under the matriarchy. But once you know the real Asiatic history, your questions are answered. And this is no different. Why I want to enter two things with you. If you go to the Library of Congress, United States Library of Congress, there's certificates of registration of information that has some of that there. So they know it too. This is again why, like, some people who are more up on things and who may have other agendas or might be slightly compromised, get upset when you mention CMB and the registrations. Like, for instance, even to have the literature like the Circle of Life and stuff like that years ago, you couldn't even get it. You'd have to send an application. Years ago, it was 12. They raised it to 24, saving maybe 20 years ago. But to even get the book, and you mail to the Library of Congress, and you wouldn't even get the mailing information unless somebody told you, like that was a member of the Order of the Great Seal. And then you get an application, mail it to the Library of Congress, Copyright Office. Then they mail it to you, and they mail you a certificate, 2 certificates mainly, in a manila envelope. And then once you got the certificate, they don't give you the books. Then those who have access to the books will let you have access to it. Now, of course, years ago, the fact that I started sharing a lot of that information with people created a lot of consternation with people in both Masonic orders and in the Order of the Great Seal and in certain chambers around it, because that kind of like what they would say, told people things that are only given in secret societies, and I made it available to ordinary people. But my I'm not justifying my position was, I saw so much corruption, and then seeing our people suffering and not really understanding what they're dealing with. So I put it out there. Made a lot of enemies, but
you sure did. Because folks have they sometimes make a living off of the secrets they keep.
And that's another reason why I did it. Yeah. Even when I started doing, and it created problems, and we're still working it out. When I put out the lawful name correction that interfered with the bond system, I already know what it did. People was looking for answers, or they didn't. I sent this to the Library of Congress, and they sent me a response, but they didn't answer. They ain't supposed to answer, because they figure if you got this far, you're supposed to know the history.
You put them on notice, right? That's all.
That's all. You're claiming the estate. In other words, you're nationalizing. But nationalization is more than what most people think it is. You know, that's a subject in its own right. And this is, and because we've had so much consternation and infiltration from COINTELPRO operations over the years, you know, in which many of you who do some research can find that in FBI papers, the infiltration into the Moorish Divine National Movement. And that's when you go into those congressional records, then you start finding out the relationship that a lot of other organizations actually had coming out of the Moorish movement, which would include the Temple of Islam and the Temple of Allah, which became the Nation of Islam. So most people don't know that, you know, but that's in FBI papers, including that certain personalities that the people admire. It was actually two people. That's a whole nother story. But I'm just saying to you, and most people have those degrees, don't share them with the masses. Rather than telling the people, they usually make thrones for themselves, dress up beautifully, and start having the people take care of them. And those are mostly the people that are mad at me, if you get the point. Because I've shared with people stuff that has been held as Masonic secrets.
Well, in terms of back to Yaqub, so Yaqub is the, you know, when we think about, you know, we get, oh, they're doing genetic testing and they're creating this and that. The truth be told, that's something that started with our people, because he seems to be, you know, one of the progenitors of genetic manipulation. And in that, he created the so-called division that we've been dealing with. And then, you know, what they call the science of control.
Now you'll
through polarity, right? Through polarity.
Yes. So now when you go into the ancient Moabite history, right, then you get into Zodiacus. See, and this is back to when you really know your history. Yes, on the surface, you will have that view. But when you go into the real history, then you understand the issue of the iniquity that's referred to in the Heliotext or the Bible, and also the creation or the casting out and the shadow of the lower self, and also the off-worlders. That has always been part of the culture.
Would these creations also maybe be what was called in the Bible the lepers? Would they have been the lepers?
That's the lepers that's be put behind the rock.
Okay. All right.
That's it. Now, but the deal of it is when it still boils down to their lesions were all white. This is why some people call the hybrid in more modern time white man.
So here we go. But what you just said, you know, a lot of times, you know, when we've read it and interpreted, when I was, you know, preaching and so forth, the legions were sores, but legions can also mean a great amount of many of. So there was legions of these
legions. It was legions, not legions. The legions was what is referred to by them today, leprosy and skin cancer.
Okay, but these were people that were in the process of being grafted and they were genetically.
Let me interject to help you along, because although we're not necessarily getting into that, you know, the Isle of Patmos,
which is where he went, where John was on the Isle of Patmos, and that's where Yaqub allegedly did
first drop off before the land of Angles.
Okay.
The land of Angles is later referred to as England.
England. Okay.
Yes. Now, so this is why also when you hear some of them refer to themselves as Anglo-Saxon.
Saxons, yeah.
All right. Now, now keep in mind, when we ruled the planet, that area of Iberia, where we took them behind the rocks, because remember, Yaqub's middle name is Caucasus.
Okay, that's where they get the Caucasian.
Exactly, which is the mountains that we put them in. That's the rock. mentioned in the Heliotext that the people call nowadays the Bible, right? And the Bible is not really the name of that book. It's Heliotext.
Heliotext, yeah.
Yeah, but when you know the real history,
would that be Sun Book, right?
Book of the Sun.
Book of the Sun, okay.
Yes. Sun Book, yes. All right. So everything is Cosmo. Because now you got to remember, even when you're talking about Dr. Yaqub, and because so much emphasis is put on Yaqub, people keep forgetting about the 13 Moabite
women.
Women, they were the major ones.
Yeah.
This is again why, you know, in the cover up the history, they always try to call the evolution operations of human development here as evil. So they say Eve was evil, evolution.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and all even that, all that stuff is contemporary history to us. That's not even modern. That's not, people from the training and looking at that as the ancient history in their mind, what they refer to as the beginning type thing. No, that's modern to us. You know, and this is again, the hybrid European desperately suppresses this information. This is again a part of why the cave system in Lower Egypt is the people are not allowed to go but so far into those cave systems in Kentucky and Tennessee, which is Lower Egypt, and definitely not in the Grand Canyon, because there are juntas, or what you call pyramids, that are older than the ones on the other side right here. And for those who are in your different societies like Malta, Knights of Malta, your Odd Fellow, Masons, etc., Daughters of American Revolution, DAR, all your secret societies, Knights of Columbus, etc., Thule Society, all around the world. That's why all of them, in all of their chambers, operations wear the Moorish fez. You know, and people who don't know the history keep thinking this stuff is contemporary. This stuff is beyond ancient. And then they will refer to it as, from their perspective, as the ancient Egyptian order, arc degrees type thing. And of course, you already know, dealing with the element of water, which is also symbolized as carrying the wisdom and memory. This is why you see them do libations with the water and stuff like that, because, you know, it contains memory. And the ritual of casting, that ritual itself is what's called God, not a being.
Right.
The word God means to call upon, to invoke, to pour out. And so the ritual, that's called Godding.
It's a verb, right? God is a verb.
Yeah, it's a verb transitive.
Transitive, yeah, okay.
And that's why they would refer to the God principle as latent powers. In other words, once you know the culture, a lot of things that people think that they know one way is really not what they think it is. But of course, if the people were told the truth of culture on the planet, it would destroy the religious organizations, and they would lose power and control. This is again why they want to control the narrative and make people think that not so much what they refer to as extraterrestrial, that interterrestrial and other terrestrial is, they won't say to you, because it's always been a part of what's here. Or if they're dealing with archaeological stuff, they always like cut your mind off it like it's somewhere else. It's somewhere else. It's always been here. And the deal of it is we're actually imprisoned, politically imprisoned, and they'll just simply call it the ice wall.
Wow.
Stuff like that.
Now I'm looking at stuff with regard to some of the prophecies and so forth, and so you had the Dogon prophecies, the Hopi prophecies, some of these prophecies, seemingly pointing to maybe where we are now, for instance, perhaps in some of that. And I know that the Dogon talk about beings called Nomo, right? And when I looked at the Nomo and who they are or were, no, I would say are, in terms of their connection, that these they're connected to water. They're connected to amphibian, like the serpent like fish beings. And then I thought of the Piscean era where the Catholic Church attempted to make themselves, the mitre that looks like the head of a fish, and
and the mitre now
the robe. They used to have robes that looked like they had fins and so forth. Were they trying to impersonate the Nomo that, like, say, the Dogon?
All right. Now you see, now let me throw some things out there to work. I'm thinking. Yes, good. Now the mitre, what else does the mitre means? Mitre means the square. And the square is used in what? Carpentry. But yet the fish head is also the Piscean constellation.
And the age that we were in, that we just coming out of with the deception and so forth. But I'm saying
you're getting into the real Earth culture.
Well, with the Vatican having a lot of like serpentine things, like you look at the thing in the big auditorium they have, looks like you're in the mouth of a serpent, and you see what it looks like. What is the place where they had the Pope laid out? I saw a aerial view of it, and that looks like the head and the body of a snake. The building layout, and was it St. Peter's Basilica or whatever. So I see a lot of that fish type symbology, and I realized that the Nomo and the Dogon, with the Nomo, they were like serpent-like, fish-like gods that came from Sirius B, but they were connected to water.
Yes. Now let me interject. Excuse me. Huh? When you're done, I'll make your plate when you're finished. All right, thank you. Excuse me. Prime Minister always looking out for me. Being sure to act right. Feed me. But now you've got to look at the culture. And so when you look at the ancient ones here, right? Mm-hmm. And then you look at Aquila, and how Aquila is used, or the feathers of Aquila is used all around the world with the aboriginals. Now there's a distinction. Aboriginal
from the original,
and from aboriginal with the mix comes indigenous.
Okay.
Aboriginal is first. Mm-hmm. Indigenous is second. Although people who don't know anthropology will use them conjoined, and they're actually not. This is another reason why they don't teach etymology. So they can keep people arguing with each other and keep them scattered while the hybrid rules. So keep this in mind. When you're looking at, like, say, some of your tunnel systems and inner cities, which are ancient, under the land of Nod, which you call New York area, that's land of Nod. All right.
Now, how does that tie into where was Cain?
Yes.
Was banished to the land of Nod, right?
Yeah.
Or he left and went to the land of Nod, where the others, where he thought the folks might kill him.
It's on this side.
I see.
See, one of the keys. This is how the Wigamores control the narrative here. Because remember, one of the major missions with the Convention of 1854 at Philadelphia is to reconstruct the history, to mentally disconnect the people here from the land. This is where the fiction of the so-called African diaspora has its root. It's total fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it's been told so heavily and strongly, people in the name of scholarship defend it. But yet it's false. People were already here, always. You know, and because it's not rational, and the sailing routes and stuff like that they haven't taught to people, they start talking. They created the fiction of the land bridge from Alaska and from Upper Asia.
Or the Bering Strait and all that
They
stuff.
say that we walked across there. BS. You know, the land was always together. We was all over the planet. Midgard.
You know what was interesting when you think in terms of back when I was saying something about the fact that they fictionalized the distance between back when I can't remember her name. She was running for president. She lived in Alaska, and she could see Russia. She could she could stand. Alaska's so close, but she could stand wherever she was, and she could see Russia. And nobody really thought about what you mean. Is that close?
Yeah, right now, they don't tell the people here much. Right now, you have Asiatics and Russians that are mining and doing other things in Alaska right now, never left. You know, so you know a lot of the geopolitics that is being taught today is false too. You know, and a lot of the wars are continuations of church bullets, which is why they're so determined to maintain certain wars when it don't appear to make sense to people who don't know the real history. Or even, you know, when they talk about the during the early wars here, and they cut out the history that if it wasn't for the Russians coming here, that these Europeans wouldn't have been able to lock things down. No different than they make up that false history when the Khazarians were destroying Germany, and Hitler was put in place, and he was a figurehead, the real person behind him. Actually, they were actually trying to save Germany, and the whole history they even tell about him is false.
About Hitler?
Yes, he's not it's not defending him, but the whole thing that they've told you about him is totally false. All that stuff will come out later, but the deal of it is he was defending Germany, because the same people that are destroying the world now, and the same banksters, the same thing they did to Germany that destroyed Germany. That's what caused Hitler to rise. He was trying to protect Germany.
So he was doing what the brother over in Burkina Faso and all.
It's going now exactly.
What Castro did.
He was nationalizing Germany.
What Castro did, yeah.
You can do the research on Weimar Germany, and if you talk to Europeans, not on this side, on that side, about the problems that are having, and they're referencing what's going on right now, and they're saying them same people is doing to North America what they did to Weimar Germany, which is what's going on right now with the economics. Same people. Hybrids, and they're Khazarians, not Jews. You know, and it's back to when you know the real history, you don't allow them to control the narrative. One of the problems that we have as a people is that our people really don't know the real history, and they're controlled by the reconstruction. And so when you deal with Horace Greeley, when you do the research, you'll notice that he was a New York newspaper tycoon.
Yeah.
And when they started taking over, you know, that's why they refer to the New York crimes. They'll say some of the Europeans who know the history refer to the New York crimes instead of the New York Times, and they refer to their being their oldest newspaper, right? So Horace Greeley owned that. Then, so when he came down and joined the Whiggamore Party, that's when they under the conscience Whigs, they agreed in the convention to start calling themselves white people officially in 1854 with the convention at Philadelphia. And the claims on the land, this is why they have that celebration, you know, because they also altered the calendars in order to support the reconstructed history. That's why when you look at the treaties, the years don't align. And so, like, just like in this book, as an example, when this book,
Move it that way.
Diplomatic history
Of the American people.
Yes. Even with the letter from George Washington to the Sultan of Morocco, then you'll see the treaty, the oldest running treaty that Obama mentioned.
Mazelov, all that
Yes.
stuff.
And then you have a better understanding of the Mummers Parade and why they assemble at 6 and More Street. 6 and More Street. Mummers. Now, and you see they for years up until around 85, they would always have troops within the venues, and they would put dark makeup, what they would call blackface,
yeah,
on up into them. And their museum is down South Philly, and that's totally related to the Whiggamore Party with the celebration of the fall of the Moors. And then you'll see them march west. Now, Horace Greeley, that's why I say, go west, young man. That's where that term came from. So it's taken over the Maghreb, which is the west. Maghreb is Morocco, the most extreme west. It's a political operation. And then you see them march west, turn 90 degrees on the square, mitre, see, square, on Broad Street, and they go to Jupiter. See, now we're 13th, Jupiter, planet Jupiter, see? And then you see Lafayette, a statue in bronze with George Washington, who helped convert to the estates. And Lafayette, you'll see them in statues in front of the Grand Lodge. And that was one of the last lodges that George Washington closed right there. And then you see the parapet at the north, and in the entry of that lodge there, one of the first rooms where people come from around the world and take tours. And the first room they would take you to is the Moorish room. And in recent years, in about the last 10 years or so, they changed it to the Oriental room because people were catching on. You know, and they have exact duplications of the ancient Hikupta temples in those rooms. And whenever they have tours, they never take people into all of them. The other issue is that when they take you in the tours in the building, if you walk around that building, the perimeter of the building, and then go inside the building, and they're not even taking you in all the building, it appears bigger inside than it does outside. And you wonder, how's all these big temples fit inside? Optically, don't appear to make sense. You can go right back outside, walk around the building, right? On Fulton, go around the building, and then walk back in the building, and you're not even going through all the building. And it appears bigger inside. It's almost like going in a tent, and it's bigger inside. And you go outside and look at, what the hell? It's illusion, but that's it. And the exact duplications. And of course, the whole operations of them controlling the Western Hemisphere under the military operations, logically. But they'll put it in a structured form of the history and say Colombo on a mission for Queen Isabella and Ferdinand. They defeated the Moors on the other side and in Iberia. And what is really Iberia now is written into the history as Europe. That's really Iberia, right? So, and what they call Spain on that side is really Al-Andalus. Now, so when Boabdil ceded the Alhambra so they wouldn't burn it down, it's used to this very day. And as a matter of fact, when they burned them women and children on them ships, that's where they got their holiday that they call April Fool. You know, so when you know the real history, a lot of this stuff ties together. But one of the dynamics of how they teach the history is to disconnect the people mentally here from the land. This is why they started pumping the fiction of the so-called African diaspora, which is total fiction. You have maybe 1 or 2% of the people that's here that actually is from the other side. 98%.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was engines going by. I'm sorry. I muted myself. Right. But you were talking about the Weimar Germany, and I wanted to go back and revisit that because again, it speaks to when you don't know the history, your history, or the history.
They control the narrative,
right? And then you are actually destined, and you may have reason to repeat it without knowing, but you see yourself going in. So I'm looking now at that situation, which was I guess had something to do with the Treaty of Versailles or something, but it says that their economy was crippled, and it caused what I guess they talk about the hyperinflation, and people carried wheelbarrows of money to get a loaf of bread. So
now you see what's happening.
They had this, here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a connection to the things that they've been predicting. Like I said, but with the 1920s, the German mark was worthless. They talking about the devaluation of the dollar. Saying that's how they got into the Great Depression. So we need to study and know these things and see the signs of those things, so that we ourselves are not,
don't get caught in the trap, not knowing what you're dealing with. Now,
so Hitler was so upset, it seems, with what was going on with Germany and all of that he
was as a national defending his nation.
Right. That's what it looks like, which is not the way this
like. That's what it was.
Okay, but that's not how that you said. That's not how the story was told.
That's not the narrative.
That's not the narrative that was.
Not only that, they don't tell the people about the submarines, and many of the chemicals that were used came from Newark, New Jersey.
Oh my!
And on ships and stuff marked from Panama and other nation states to disguise it, and that the Congress here funded.
Whose side? What side? What side did they fund?
The United States corporation.
No. Who were they funding? Hitler or
those operations? Both sides.
Oh, so they didn't care. It was a win-win.
You got to remember,
economic hitmen. Economic hitmen. Yeah.
We're back to now. What are we discussing? We're talking civics.
Right.
What has happened? Why is it that our people keep losing? They're trained in a false narrative. They defend their enemies to this day, not knowing who the real enemy is. Right? And this is why they go against people that are really trying to help them, because they don't understand what they're dealing with. In their minds, they know that they're not dumb. They just don't know that they're missing real history. Just like our people will say, we've been miseducated, and then turn around, don't examine the fact that they've been miseducated. Then use that miseducation to try to make successes and keep passing this destruction to the next generation. Then calling it racism, not knowing anything about Carlos Linnaeus. No different than even after the fact, not understanding that a dollar comes from Yakanthaler, which means a gold coin. And you see intelligent people with 5 degrees on the wall and student loan debt still think a Federal Reserve note is a dollar and not a bookkeeping system. It's a debt note. It says dollar bill. Bill in law means debt. Dollar means gold coin. It's an oxymoron. They can't read. But if you say that, they'll take it personally. It's, again, why it's kind of difficult, but we got to, persistently do what we do to try to help the people, because they're going to need this information, because as things collapse, you can't have incompetent people trying to self-govern. Although our people keep talking about they want to self-determination, and then they wear kente cloths and feathers and stuff like that and tribal stuff, and don't even understand government principle, because those principles are ancient. They don't change. They think it belongs to him. No different than like Honesty Confederation, right? Honesty Confederation actually draw off and gave them some of the ancient constitutional principles of the ancient Moabite Canaanites tribes here, and they rewrote the history, call them Iroquois Indians. That's Honesty Confederation. It's a confederation. That's not an Indian name. That's a Aboriginal Confederation of the North. Just like Powhatan is a confederation of tribes of the South. Those were the 2 major ones. So the major tribes here of the descendancy before the overthrow was the Powhatan Confederation to the south, Honesty Confederation to the north. The duplication of that now that they copy, they call the Republican Democratic parties. And they're not the same, but I'm just saying structure. We showed them government. That's why anybody in government must be a Mason. Because those ancient principles of government structure is ancient. It's just that they're corrupt. They corrupted it. No different than when you do the research in Europe, like in around 1857 area. This is where the Templars came here and blended in and hid among the Masons because the popes were killing them. This is fights that they had among themselves because they were preserving a lot of the ancient history, and the popes of Rome figured they had too much power. But the Templars pretty much control the banking systems.
To this day?
Yeah. And so then when you do the research, then you look at they started with those who were sort of like dealing with the Cretans that were pretending to be Christians and trying to take over Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is now called Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
And they call themselves the protectors of the Christians on the pilgrimage. And those same principles are taking place here. And so now you have the reflection of Kaiklos that you call today Ku Klux Klan, which means the grand protectors of the Christian creed. That's Kaiklos. And so our people are actually protecting Kaiklos who are claiming to be Christians, when actually that culture belongs to our people. But that's Coptic, if you get the point. And so basically what they've done is simply taken ancient Moabite Canaanite culture, corrupted it, and insert themselves into history like it's theirs. And this creates a lot of confusion today. And so civics not being taught, people don't know how to free themselves from the mind control. This is why you can never get our people together in a cohesive and functional group, because they operate on beliefs that are controlled by a reconstructed narrative as reference points. And so you got 50% or more of the people thinking that they came on a good ship, Jesus, in 1555. You got others who think North America is India, and they all same blood and got them fighting each other. No different than Geronimo, as an example, right? Was used to convince the tribes to stop resisting. And after they got some control, they threw him in jail, took his gun, threw him in jail, and then boiled his body, bleached the bones, and those bones you see them using crossing bones in stone. That's Geronimo's bones. You know, our people really don't know their history, not from the real side.
And what you were saying is that it's just true about the Reconstruction. So, you know, the way
that's why they call it
has been weaponized.
Reconstruction.
Right, it's been weaponized, and it you know I guess in their attempt to erase our indigenous roots and to disconnect,
erase our aboriginal roots.
Aboriginal, right? Disconnect us from the land and from inheritance, from our sovereignty. Actually,
this is why you will see the Europeans keep emphasizing indigenous under the War Department.
Yeah,
that's more contemporary, not invalid, but it's more contemporary, and it comes under War Department jurisdiction.
Right.
You know, and people need to understand jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Now, if you notice that as they keep our people all emotional about trying to restore our right to the land and stuff, you notice how some of the Shemite tribes years ago, they started having them under the guise of having some sovereign right, not develop international trade and not allowing other nation states to fly in. Because remember, the BOA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA, comes under Calhoun, under the War Department. So that's how they claim jurisdiction. So they let them make up all those casinos, generate a lot of finance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then took them over. They still let them run. Because the deal with it is because that whole paradigm comes under the War Department. It's not independent.
Yeah.
But the people think as soon as you say an indigenous state, you know, oh, we got some sovereignty. North America is not India. And we're not Indians, although we're referred to, classified as Aboriginal and indigenous as a classification. But the people think it's an identification.
Right. And, you know, the truth, they lied so much. But the truth is, Grand Sheikh, and I realized this, that some did come over here on so-called slave ship, but not most. The majority was that they didn't begin as slaves. Even the ones that did come, they were like
go to the record and you'll
royals. But what I'm saying is they had captured people like the royals. They were scientists. They were warriors, and they brought people of renown here. The few that they did, because we weren't here. So we are indigenous. We know that.
What you're going to find.
Land.
Most of the people on them ships was Europeans under indenture contract.
Right, but the ones that were so-called melanated, most of the time they were some tribe had captured somebody else from a warring of some royalty from another tribe.
It has too much diaspora flavor.
Yeah, they handed them off.
No, because now slave is Slovakian nations.
Right. I know that. I know
The
that.
majority was hybrid Europeans.
I realize that, Grand Sheikh, but here's what I'm saying. The ones that did come over here that did have brown and copper skins, and so for a lot of them, they have been not captured by Europeans, modern Europeans. They were traded off by neighboring, tribal so-called wars in Africa that enslaved people.
Many of them that were assumed in the reconstructed history,
right,
to be Europeans were both mixed and Moors, including a lot of your so-called, what they refer to in the history as slave masters. One of your biggest slave holders was actually an Asiatic woman. Here. Yeah. Even the history here is corrupted.
Oh, yeah. Anthony Johnson. There's a guy named Anthony Johnson, I believe.
Yeah, I forget her name at the same time. They talk about him. They talk about Johnson. The biggest owner was actually a woman.
Was
she
a melanated woman?
Here, yes. A lot of things they ain't told you the truth.
Yeah.
But what happens with a people keep going into the history and not taking accountability. What people like to do, they like to go into history, look at the good parts that make us look good, pat ourselves on the back, and ignore the negative. When actually it's negative, a lot of negative to pass around to everybody. But it doesn't remove the fact that we were already here, and that the whole narrative that's built around the so-called slave trade relative to people in this land is totally untrue. Even the buildings were more sophisticated and even dealt with drawing electricity just like they did in ancient Egypt off the land. All your older buildings had cupolas just like they do in the East with rods at the top, not wirings. They had electric. They tore a lot down so they could control the narrative. So people keep thinking that electric and stuff is new. It ain't new. Just like people think electric cars is new. It ain't new.
No.
But we're not getting into that, but I'm just saying the people and all of that deals with anthropology and civics. And within those venues of governing and having organized government, the science discipline is called civics. And so civics is the fundamental maxim teaching to maintain, manage, and transfer principles of organized government. That's why it's based in laws of nature. We say nature's law and nature's God.
Right.
So the deal of it is people hear these terms and keep thinking that they came from hybrid Europeans. No, they came from your own forefathers. The Constitution.
Where are they? Who's in Davos, Switzerland? You always talk. Who's there? Who's hiding there?
Davos, Switzerland is where the jurisdiction is operative of the United States Corporation Company operating on the land now, today, that the people keep calling that Trump is the CEO of.
So those are Europeans, modern Europeans.
Now you got it. No different than the allodial titles and right of claim instrumentalities that were stolen from the Aboriginal people here, Jekyll Island, 1913. Many of those documentations are held in Deutsche Bank in Germany. And the people here are trained in their concept of jurisdictions, but it's not operative the way the people have been trained. Those who really know civics know that they're gaslighting and controlling the narrative. In other words, the national jurisdictions in the concept that people here are trained in school to be are not actually operative with them. As an example, the operations of Canada, which is broken up into multiple provinces that actually operate almost independent as multiple nation states within themselves, but are presented to the world as something separate. It comes under the crown, just like the U.S. corporation here comes under the crown. But it's not taught that way in history, so that the people here keep thinking that they're separate jurisdictions. They operate together to control the Western Hemisphere, the Maghreb. Now, when you know real civics, you know that what they say, but you don't fall for it because you know it's gaslighting. And you already know this is why no matter what they do, you hold them to their obligations, even though you know they're not going to honor them. But you have to honor to have claim of right of competency. It's not unlike in the rule of law, because remember, at all times under wardship tenure, because it's military tenures, they continuously declared our people are incompetent. And then some of them who are somewhat competent more under the tribal operations, they come under the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and that comes under the War Department. That's a jurisdiction. That's not independent sovereign. However, there's a sense that they're more sovereign than the others, but that's created to create schism, if you get the point. And it's worked quite well. And it's all right, but we'll work our way out of that too, if you get the point. But things have to, the deal of it is, as the institutions break down, our people will be more receptive of self-government, mainly because they're going to have to be. But again, go ahead.
I was going to say, we were going to try to get the brother on, but there, I had a conversation with Brother Julian, who I will be bringing on the show, but with regard to what is happening in some of the so-called states, administrative states, one of which, and he domiciles at North Carolina, and I'm not sure what part of North Carolina, but I do know that there is another so-called republic, I guess a republic form of government that is forming, and they basically deal under the jurisdiction of what they call the Federation of States. If you've heard about that. So and they call themselves Reawakening the Lawful Republic.
All right, now this is back to needing to understand. Let me go to the United States law as an example. So now we're going back to principle, right? Mm-hmm. Now you see that right there?
Code of the laws, yeah.
But excuse me. Now I'm gonna read this and you'll understand. Okay. Meaning that people need to understand what they're saying. Mm-hmm. What create it? See, the jurisdiction exists. You got to get back to it, right? Mm-hmm. It already exists, meaning that in law you can't make up something that doesn't have a foundation that already exists. In other words, you can't create an office that's not related to the existed obligations. You can, because you have that right to do, but you can't hold someone else obligated to it. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. So let's show just what you're just saying. I'm going to show you the obligation. All right. See, because like when people have not been active and you see people act, one of the hardest things is to teach the people their civic duty and obligation to recognize the jurisdiction that they're standing on. See, because people who don't really understand jurisdiction will think it's just their opinion. You get the point? Mm-hmm. So this is the principle is standing on. This is law. Code of Law of the United States of America of a general and permanent character, right? Now, this is, you're dealing with Title 22, United States Code of Law. So anybody can write that down, Title 22. And that would deal with foreign relations and intercourse. And that would be located on page 954 when you go into the records, all right? Just so people can do their research. Chapter 2 is consular courts. That would be where the circle, or what you would call the tribal shakuns or shakins, right? After meeting with the circle of mothers or under the tree of peace, would meet in delegation with the Congress, members of the Congress, to exchange diplomatic norms on the law. And this is where, like when you see Article 6 of the Constitution, it says all debts and agreements and contracts entered into before the adoption of the Constitution shall be binding against the United States. Why? Because the Aboriginal people are the superior, you see? So the Constitution binds them. And then it says that all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. So the Constitution and the treaty are one document. So that's the venue. That's the republic. Outside of that foundation, this is why they overthrew the republic when they killed Lincoln, so they would have no obligation to the treaty. And then they enforced their misconception of the history. And so when our people make complaints, they're actually off the square. They have no standing. That's why they created the black codes and the artificial 14th Amendment later unconstitutionally to give appearance of proper platform, when the proper platform is Article 3, Section 2, diversity, i.e. foreign states, because the Constitution is an international document. But people who don't know civics don't know that. So our people allow the politicians to create the narrative, and they always have jurisdiction. You see the point?
Right. So what are some are asking what the title is that you are reading from? I know you held it up, but
that's United States Code of Laws of a general and permanent character.
It's
called in force. January,
can you hold it up?
Of the latest. This is just an excerpt from my book, from one of my lesson books. But this is actually from the United States law, from the
it's
record.
like what USC something which
yes, I United States. And this would be so look up Title 22 of United States law.
Okay.
And they would give it abbreviation as USC.
USC, yeah.
That would be United States Code of Law.
Okay.
The chapter of the communication, that means the jurisdiction for treaty enforcement with the authority of the Constitution, is Chapter 2.
Okay.
Now, remember, Article 3, Section 2 says public ministers, diplomats, ambassadors, and consulars. Those are your venues. Now, you also know why they don't teach civics, because they've made up a whole bunch of other inferior courts that actually been designed to rob the people, and they have no constitutional standing. And this, and all lawyers, all good lawyers know this. They don't teach it, but it's very simple. That's why when you see people get in really, really serious trouble and you're talking about you're going to get a really good lawyer, they're not going to say it directly, but that's what they're invoking.
Okay.
Because
And that chapter again.
They know that the state's courts actually have no jurisdiction.
What is that chapter again? Chapter 22, paragraph 2?
No, it's title.
Oh.
22.
Okay.
Chapter 2.
Okay.
Subsection 141, subsection 142, subsection 143.
Okay.
And I'll read the jurisdiction and the obligations. This is the jurisdiction. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse, page 954. Chapter 2, Consular Court. Section 141, Judicial Authority generally. This what establishes the office that the tribal chiefs would stand on when they're communicating with them. Are we clear? And is superior to these so-called local inferior courts. This is what people don't understand. And logically, they don't want you to know that. Section 141, Judicial Authority generally. So generally, so you see the broadness? To carry into full effect the provisions of the treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries. See, so foreign don't mean distance the way people think it means. It means also jurisdiction. The ministers and consuls of the United States in China, Siam, Turkey, Morocco, that would be here, see, Muscat, Abyssinia, Persia, and the territories, plural, formerly a part of the former Ottoman Empire, including Egypt. See, when you get into law, it's current, and you're standing on Egypt too. But remember, the empire was broken up, and all these were actually subdivisions of the empire. All right, but anyway, let me continue. Duly appointed to reside therein shall, in addition to other powers and duties imposed upon them, respectively, by the provisions of such treaties, respectively, be invested with the judicial authority described in this chapter. That would be chapter 2, right? Which shall appertain to the office of minister and consul. This is why they always say our people have a right to counsel. They be lying. It's consul. See, and then they say counsel, then they turn the people to the 14th Amendment. Okay. When they're supposed to be turning them to Article 3, Section 2. See the trap?
Yep.
And this is why civics is important to be taught to our people. As our people have been incompetent, not knowing they were incompetent. But anyway, respectively, by the provisions of such treaties, respectively, be invested with the judicial authority described in this chapter, which shall appertain to the office of minister and consul, and be a part of the duties belonging thereto, wherein and so far as the same is allowed by treaty, and in accordance with the usages of the countries in their intercourse with the Franks or other foreign Christian nations. And then you have all your series of references of law cases. And so you see Christian is a political system. Our people think it's religion. You see, and you see how easily concepts, when civics is not really taught, that our people are easily guided by the politicians saying things that sound like it's in their interest, and they demonstrate constant incompetence. then they get upset because they're declared without them saying it directly that they're wards of the state. Then they misuse them because they're really incompetent, but they don't know they're incompetent. Now, all right, now let's continue. Title 22, Section 2, Section 142. This deals with general jurisdiction in criminal cases. The officers mentioned in Section 141 of this title are fully empowered to arraign and try in the manner provided for in this chapter all citizens of the United States charged with offenses against the law committed in such countries, respectively, and to sentence such offenders in the manner in this chapter authorized, and each of them is authorized to issue such processes as are suitable and necessary to carry this authority into execution. RS subsection 4084. Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 143. General jurisdiction in civil cases. So you see it's dealing with criminals under 141, right? And civil.
Somebody wrote there that the 141 has been repealed.
Yes, this is where you're dealing with what Eisenhower did in 54.
Mm-hmm.
Now keep in mind, they don't have the authority to repeal it. They have to abandon jurisdiction. That's why I tell people they need to study 54 to 56. Dwight Eisenhower administration, they relinquished jurisdiction at Morocco, but instead of telling the people the venue, because remember, what is the rule for altering or modifying the Constitution? What's the rule?
Don't know.
You must have a constitutional convention. There's been no constitutional convention since George Washington. That's number one. And after they overthrew the republic, anything they do is de facto. They can't change the Constitution. Just because they say so, it's invalid. And at the same time, they introduced the 14th Amendment to take the place of this. That's why the 14th Amendment is attached to all of our people and not to other people. It is the corrupt, artificial, colored venue that was created to get us off the square. That's called the dead, the 14th Amendment corporate person. And you'll see, even when Europeans have always argued, they would state what? I am not 14th Amendment. And whenever they talk 14th Amendment, they're always talking to people of color, Indians and blacks. But it's all a false narrative. And so when you see them doing any lawsuits, they would do around Title 43, right? Like that, right? Title 42, Title 43. And it all lead right back to the 14th Amendment. That's why people keep on getting screwed. And that's why we're teaching civics, because our concepts are wrong because we don't know the law. We think we do. And even people among our own who've actually secretly been selling us out will always try to dismiss it. It's sort of like people saying, well, the Constitution don't count no more. And you allow them to say that. And they're de facto. This is why, like for instance, like as we always say, Dr. G, mm-hmm. People need to keep their head clear and read the Clearfield Doctrine. Because we're talking civics, because their concepts are wrong. And just like what you're saying, like they can tell you things and that respondent said, That's them controlling the narrative. But it's a lie. The same way they controlled the narrative and told them that the 14th Amendment is part of the Constitution. It's a lie.
Right.
They just said it, but it ain't just because they said it. It is dead ab initio. But our people keep upholding it, don't they?
Yeah.
And they keep seeking remedy in it, don't they? And then get frustrated. Generation after generation after generation, keep getting screwed. And finally, people are starting to wake up to it, and they're arguing against it. But at the same time, they don't understand that it's taking the place of Article 3, Section 2. Now, let me read Section 143, and then we're going to go to the Constitution, and then for people who've accepted that misinformation, bring up in the congressional record the Constitutional Convention of 54 that they're implying that didn't take place, where this was repealed. You can't repeal the Constitution. They can't even add anything to it without a constitutional convention. And now what do we have here, Dr. G? How people are influenced by politicians by saying things because the people don't know the rules of the game. That's why we got to teach civics. Because these politicians can tell them anything and they go for it. So what happens when people accept that? They run to the 14th Amendment for remedy because they have no other remedy, because consular courts were what? Dismissed. They were neglected. It didn't leave the Constitution. In other words, just because they deny the Republic, did the Republic leave? Dr. G?
No.
All right, is the operation here the U.S. democracy, or is it Republic? Article 4, Section 4.
It's the U.S. democracy, although the Republic is
Article 4,
here.
Section 4 establishes what?
The Republic, right?
For every state in this union. At what point does Republic say democracy?
No, at no point.
But the politicians keep saying it, don't they?
Yes, they do.
That's a 14th Amendment argument. And the people bought it, don't they?
Yeah,
and keep defending it, don't they? And keep losing, don't they?
Yeah.
And then they keep wondering why, hey, people don't have no respect for us because we let them lie to our face, gaslight, and then we start promoting the false venues and attacking anyone who enforces Constitution, which means we've abandoned the square, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Now, let me read this and then continue, Dr. G. Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 143, general jurisdiction in civil cases. So now you got the criminal venues and you got the civil venues. They still have them venues, but they have them under corporate state courts under the Bar Association, not under the Constitution.
Article 3, yeah.
Such officers are also invested with all the judicial authority necessary to execute the provisions of such treaties respectfully in regard to civil rights. See, that's where the civil rights is supposed to come under. You see that, Dr. G?
Mm-hmm.
Whether of person, of property, or person. And they shall entertain jurisdiction in matters of contract at the port where or nearest to which it was to be executed, and in all other matters at the port where or nearest to which the damage complained of was sustained, provided such port be one of the ports at which the United States are represented by consuls. So when they're dealing with our people, they be saying council, don't they?
Yes.
Of the Bar Association, don't they?
Right.
They don't say consul of the Constitution, do they?
And that's part of their connotative linguistics. It's so close.
Exactly. So consul is constitutional. Council is a violation of the supremacy clause because members of the bar are not supposed to hold office. You see how easily these people keep getting played against their own interests and will defend it? Now, people who don't know civics accept it without having reference to research. Emotionally, I'm reading the law. What I'm reading is the law. Now, if this contrary, show for the record the constitutional convention by which this was eliminated from the Constitution. Therefore, the judicial powers of the United States, the judicial power itself was abrogated because that's what established those courts. Public minister, for those of you who are listening, write down Article 3, Section 2, constitutional judicial powers, and read that and then say, and then in relationship to the implied misinformation, show when there was a constitutional convention and that Article 3, Section 2 was eliminated from the Constitution and then substituted with the 14th Amendment. They won't say it because it never happened. But you'll always see them try to dismiss it. Why? Because if the people were taught constitutional principle, they wouldn't, for generations, been sacrificing generations running after the 14th Amendment for remedy. Every time something happened to our people, they were running to civil rights courts with some preacher guy to march around as an overseer and raising finance to give it to some Jew lawyers to represent them to ask for mercy.
Just like right now, they're shaking because Trump is doing away with Section 14.
Exactly.
Article 14, rather.
This is
and you know, basically what they don't realize is that they're mourning over.
He's activating the republic.
Right, they're mourning over amendment that made them property of the state and not heirs to the land.
That designate them as property, not as
property. That's what I said. Made them state property and not heirs of the land. And they cry like, we got to keep the 14th Amendment.
And they're trying to defend it.
Yep, they don't know what they do.
Ignorance.
It's like they know not what they do.
Exactly. Exactly. Now the nations of the earth know that these people here are ignorant. So they're nationalizing their resources because they know the doo-doo has hit the fan. And like I've been saying for the last 15 years, and I said what I said, the nation's going to stop buying their treasury bonds. Didn't I say that?
Yes, you did. You have been saying it for as long as I've known you.
And what is happening right now?
It's happening.
Exactly. And they're threatening a recession when the recession's been here for 4 or 5 years already. Mm-hmm. And we're actually in depression right now. They just ain't admitting it. What do they call recession? When you have 2 successive quarters that everything falls, right? The GDP falls, right? If you have 3, it's depression. Well, this stuff has been down for 4 or 5 years. It's actually been down since 2008. They're lying, but they can only lie to people that don't know civics because they don't know how to measure things. That's where people need to stop playing on our people's emotions and tell them the truth, although it's uncomfortable, because they will be sacrificed with their ignorance.
I still say, Grand Sheikh, that the reason why they're building all of I don't know about where you all, those are listening, but between Delaware and Jersey, which I travel between a lot, all I see is they taking all the land and putting up all of these warehouses. And I can't thinking this isn't about products. It's not what I said, this isn't about products. This is not about products.
There's no windows in them, are they?
No, they're not.
Oh, well.
They're taking, Route 40, Route 273.
Remember, they're building them quick. Put it this way. Remember Weimar Germany.
Yeah.
And relative to their immigrant mentality, what I've been telling you for 10 years, Dr. G, Deutsche Bank.
Right.
Where's Deutsche Bank located?
Is that in Dusseldorf? Is that Switzerland? No, where is it?
Germany.
Germany. Okay.
What I'm saying is I put them things out there so that when they occur, you recognize them. You're not blindsided.
Mm-hmm.
And it's back to, because when you understand civics, you understand the geopolitics. You don't follow their narrative. You don't let them tell you what to think. You're looking at the records. It's no different than, you can tell our people that they have difficulty or they can't read, and they'll take it as you're insulting them rather than try to learn. We get played because we can't damn read. But then our ego gets in the way. But what happens is it costs us our social and economic lives. And when the shit hits the fan, then they take your physical life because they're not going to allow you to resist. But if you know what's going on, you start adjusting both mentally and politically without making waves ahead of time. And this is why, like I always say, Dr. G, what I've been saying from when we was across the street, I was dropping these keys because I knew it was coming. So when it's like this. If you know there's pits in the road and you travel and you're told ahead of time, you can go around them, or you can stand at the edge of the cavern trying to figure out what you're doing. Then the crowd comes behind you. Then you start pushing people over the cliff. I mean, when you really understand what's up, what do? You stay away from the crowds because the crowds are going to be sacrificed. You already know it. They're going to be running to the 14th Amendment, trying to talk about their rights. And civilized people will be going back to the Republic and enforcing the Constitution to protect their estates, because they're going to be liquidating everybody's estates until the people catch on and rebel. Meanwhile, they'll be sacrificing people along the way. In other words, it'll be chaos before it stabilizes. And for the people who think that they won't hurt you, their concepts are wrong. Yeah. Your kid's baby, what you think they do with you? They'll kill your baby with no conscience. Yeah. Selling back to you in burger joints since 1940.
Cosmetics.
Since 1942, they've been feeding these people these disappeared children. And it is known. So a lot of these communications are denial, because people don't want to look at the reality, hoping it don't get to them. They figure, like, if they play dumb with Rome won't eat them. It's like the rotisserie. And this is the same thing with the middle class Europeans. What we say 11, 12 years ago, the middle class European is going to be the new nigger, and they're going to start telling the truth. A lot of things that the Europeans been saying these last 5 to 7 years, we've said 40, 50 years ago. And people looked at us like we were out to lunch. Europeans are constantly talking what? Restoring the Republic.
And you know what? They watch our program and other, they watch Dane Calloway. They watch, of course, Dr. Key. They watch us. I get calls from them, and they want to know, how can I nationalize? How can I?
Look, this is what they need to understand. Now look at this.
I'll get some calls after this.
Now look at this. Where is their position? What's presented to them in history, right? Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Morris and all them, which was really first, Madison And then they was really first, Madison and Morris. Then you got Benjamin Franklin, right?
Mhm.
John Adams, right? Thomas Jefferson. And what was their position? Article 6. And what did they say? And what did George say to a woman that asked him about the republic? He says, "Madam, you now have a republic if you're willing to keep it." What have these people been suffering under? The U.S. democracy that they keep defending. What is that 14th Amendment attached to? U.S. democracy is not part of the Constitution. It was designed in 1868 because they squandered the finances of the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, which only stayed open 3 years. That's why these people don't have no 40 acres and a mule, because they would have had to give all the land back. And so everything they did with the Reconstruction would have been dead because we'd have had all the land back. That's why they killed Lincoln. To do what? To overthrow the republic.
And like you said, the founding fathers, and looking at it, they were committing, like you said, committed to establishing
observing the
constitutional republic
and treaty. That's
right.
where the Europeans, that's their position here. Now you understand the Naturalization Act.
Right.
Horace Greeley, they come under the Naturalization Act.
And that's, is that something that more nations, states would do for those who want to come under that?
That's the platform. See, like I keep saying, the platform already exists. It ain't being taught. They have a place, it's called the Naturalization Act. But because they were stealing our birthright with the convention, the Whigamores, they started this white and black stuff in order to steal our estate. When they're not white people, we are. It's a status. So they created all this connotative linguistics, and the people today keep thinking it's complexion. But they don't know better because they can't read, right?
Right.
Now, in relationship to that, right? Let's go to the law book, Dr. G. As a matter of fact, pull your law book from behind you.
Where is it? Is it back here?
Yeah.
Yep. Black's Law.
Now, go to Free White People.
Okay, free white persons.
Yes. Now read it. Tell the page so the people can have their reference.
This is Fourth Black's Law, Henry Common Black's
Black's Law Dictionary,
Fourth
edition,
page 792.
Now you got to qualify ancient and modern jurisprudence.
Okay, ancient and modern jurisprudence.
In other words, the deal of is you have to give them scholarship. So we got a little bit more detailed, so they have reference. So free white persons.
Quote unquote, free white persons referred to in Naturalization Act as amended
Slow down. So take notes. So now you're dealing in Naturalization Act. So therefore they need to know what naturalization is, don't they? So they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
All right. So just reminding you. So now keep in mind, Ulysses Grant took office after they got rid of Lincoln. So it was modified at what date?
You talk about the free white persons?
Free white persons, right?
1870?
Yes. So 1870, he modified it, right? How many years is that? July the 14th. right?
Yeah.
So how many years after 1854, Philadelphia? You see the timeline?
Mm-hmm.
So now he modified it. So you got to know the history and the civics to understand the social politics that they're dealing with that's hidden under the diversion of racism. You see how people be using these catchphrases and don't understand they are actually controlled narratives to divert you from what's going on. This is what's going on right here. This is the real politics. It's hard to get people to pay attention to real politics because they don't know civics. Again, why you're having this class. Now, I'm not going to stop you. Read that through, then make your commentary.
Okay. Free white persons, quote unquote, free white persons referred to in Naturalization Act as amended by Act July 14, 1870 has meaning naturally given to it when first used in first statute 103 C3 meaning 103 C3 meaning all persons belonging to the European races then commonly counted as white and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have emigrated with an E. Immigrated.
Understand that they're immigrants. Understand that they are immigrants. Understand that. Go ahead.
Immigrants with an E. It includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic or Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descent. It includes Magyars, Lapps, and Finns, and the Basques and the Albanians. It includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, the mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenician, and North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. It does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race.
Repeat that.
It does not mean Caucasian race.
Repeat it.
It does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races, nor the mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, and Mongolian people who inhabit Persia. A Syrian of Asiatic birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person. And then it
naturalized citizen of the United States.
Naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person.
So as you can see, it's a status. Then you mention all your law cases. That's reference.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened in 1854? Whigmore Party. They took on the title of white because they can't be white people. They traded places. You're the white people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they even hide the Tartarian history here.
Mm-hmm. Tartar inhabitants.
Who are the Moors are white people. It's a status. They're the people. They are here at Morocco. They are the real sovereign of the land. That's where all the tribes are of Canaanite Moabite descent. They're tribes, and they're loosely referred to also under military terms as Native Americans, which is a classification, not identification. But they put them under the jurisdiction of the War Department under Calhoun, under the BIA, so they could what? Control them. But implied that they were acknowledging them without sovereign power. That's why they took over all those casinos and stole all the finance once they started making money. Not money, but once they started generating a lot of vouchers, then they took over. And they was arguing, but the real deal is they can't argue And then they started doing what? The same thing they did in Seneca, New York. Once they agreed to come under the Bureau of Indian Affairs as Indians, then they had jurisdiction, and they took that land and made Harlem. You know, our people really need to understand they're being played. And so what we're doing, we're showing them the real law, the pedigree, the real anthropology, the real civics. So they're not controlled by the narrative of the Whittemore Party under Ulysses Grant and Horace Greeley, which is controlling their thought processes. That's why they always use their so-called colored overseers to garner their sanctioning under the guise of vote. What do? They took millions and went around and gave it to what they designate as Negro leader guys and gave them a couple 100,000 notes to convince our people to vote for Kamala, didn't they? Nobody want to admit it, do they? Do they? It's cottonwigs. They don't even know they're dealing with Ku Klux Klan against their own damn self. Because for the moment, she played on the sympathy of the people, act like she came under the black codes too, so that the people could sympathize with her, when she's really Hindustani and married to a Khazarian. Against their own interests, because they don't know the politics. And if you tell them the truth, they think you're against her personally. It ain't against her personally. They need to understand the politics.
So it actually says here, nor a native of India who belonged to the Hindu race. This is under free white person. So it excludes a native of India who belonged to the
Now
Hindu
you
race.
understand why a lot of them, when they come here, they marry the hybrid Europeans to get stature, because they took our place. They traded places. That's why they made the movie right there in Philadelphia. That's where the convention was. With Eddie Murphy, called Trading Places, on that small street. Right there in South Philly. And what is it about? Stock, market. And then he pretends the movie opens up when he act like he don't have legs. What are your legs? Foundation. You see the point? They're symbolically, they be telling you all kind of stuff. No different than they telling people stuff in this movie that they have called Sinners, this recent movie. They're telling you your history. With the movie with Will Smith, right? Wild Wild West. Go west, young man. What did that spider say to him? That guy that was in that spider uniform, he says to Will Smith, he says, "You look like a handsome black or more."
Oh.
Same thing they said to Martin.
Yeah.
In the what? Black Knight. And then he looking at his medallion, and he's saying, and the Europeans looking for him for guidance, because he's out of time warp. And he's saying, what's this Moore thing? He don't know himself. Then you see Robin Hood with Morgan Freeman, Mel Gibson, and they said, and they expecting him to know why, because they already know they got the civilization from the Moors. Sidney Poitier and the Boer. They tell these people over and over again. See, so the people can't really say that they didn't say it to them. Then they do the mummers parade, which means mum's the word, and they assemble at 6th and Moore Street, symbolically. Right at Philadelphia. They like to play with these people right in their faces. Just like they have these people under animal husbandry right to the day, still think they got money. Then when they got tired of, as an example today, up to date, and it's not I'm not speaking from a negative, because really if I could talk to him, I could help him out. Right? So he got a little big in the pants.
What are we talking about?
He's bankrupt. Mayweather.
Who's that? Huh?
Mayweather.
Oh, he's bankrupt. Is it because they held up his funds over?
How's it possible?
I say, this is what I say, Gracie. The Lord, listen, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
Lords of London, they run the judicial system. Now,
Yeah.
so now you're talking about what? Fleet Street, who really runs the court system. Because the fiat don't belong to you. It belongs to the governors of the Federal Reserve of the Khazarian order. It's a bookkeeping system. It fluctuates because it has no standing. When they make the fluctuation or the veiled tax, it's called inflation. We got to teach our people civics like this. The ignorance that has permeated our community must be eradicated. Yeah. We got to break the spell by breaking the connotative linguistics that our people keep treasuring as knowledge. They're not allowed to have money.
Yeah.
And you keep telling them that, and they keep thinking they have money. Then when the Khazarians, when you get a little uppity, they take it. Because it's theirs, it's not yours. That's right. It's a voucher system to the Sister QV Trust. And so now, and it's back to Teach and Jay. What are these different angles, people who understand the system, trying to get our people civically competent so that we can start holding on to some degree? As long as they rule, you're not gonna hold it all together, but you have a little bit more control of your estate. That's why you gotta have a trust. You ever notice that the Europeans, they can be dumb as a brick, and their family have old what they refer to as old money, and our people ain't figured it out yet. Because they don't understand what it is and what it isn't.
And Grand Sheikh, we do this for the generations, not just the ones to come, the ones that are here that have so much promise that they could turn this thing around. I mean, you and I.
This is why you're doing what you're doing.
Right. You and I are, 79 and 70, and we can sit here and talk about
this. Is back to the issue. What has been happening with us, Dr. G? When we talked even earlier, this is what happens with us. The elders keep going to the grave with this information and then talking about what our people need emotionally. And they keep dancing around telling the truth because they don't want to rock the boat. So they always want to speak politically correct. And what happens is they keep casting spells and then wonder why the next generation is lost. Stop lying to them. Tell them what things are. Some people are going to reject it, but then it'll be only a handful. But some will accept the truth, not because you're saying it, because they will do the research and see that they've been fooled.
Right. I see one of the brothers have put in here, and let me see if I can slide this back up. He said, I'm just going to put this up. Amir's, he said, that's why I got the land patents in Arizona expanding over 300,000 acres. I literally went to, if you recall, Sister Cynthia Martinell and myself and Brother Chris, we went to Arizona, and I sat with the brother here, and I saw, actually I think he gave me copies of the land patent. So it is actually, a fact that you can do certain things. Like I said, he came to our Airbnb where we were staying, he and his father and his son, and actually showed me and gave me a copy of the land patents. So
now this is what happens, and see, we need more people like this. Now this is normal, and should have been normal with our people for generations, not just marching and praying.
Absolutely.
Now, so keep this in mind. What did they do on Jekyll Island that they call the monster, the creature, that a lot of people don't talk about? They're always talking about the Khazarian mafia. These are the people claiming to be Jews that are not Jews, that murdered off a lot of our people off that island, right? Off the coast of Georgia. And because remember, when they overthrew Lincoln, they murdered Lincoln. So the Republic, politically, not lawfully, politically, the Republic went down with Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. So the world governments know, all Masons know, all DAR know, all Kyklaos know, all Knights of Malta know, all Adepts know, all Knights of Columbus know, all Thule Society know. The only ones that don't know is so-called black people and poor whites. That the Republic was overthrown with Lincoln. After Lincoln, no lawful government operates on the land. It's all interregnum de facto. What did they do on Jekyll Island? Because remember, after they dumped Lincoln, they ran on the bond system that they did in 1862. That set up the bond system against the Aboriginal people for Wall Street. Then they continued their operations of stealing the gold. All of this, even up to late 20s, this was happening in Tulsa. That was the most wealthy bank on the land. They don't tell you that when they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma. And steal the gold and sold and murdered the people and fed them to pigs. They don't tell you all the real history. And back that the foundation for Wall Street at the land of Nod, i.e. New York. That's the bondage, the bonds that are at the foundation of the fiat voucher system tied to the Sister QV trust system. That was tied first by the marriage certificates. The birth certificates didn't come to 33 when it crashed again. So the meeting at 1913 on the island, the operations was not so much just with the trustees for the Circle Church and Chancery and the banksters of under unum sanctum with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, etc., dealing with the construction of the fiat execution. They still had certificates, but they were still stealing the gold. But what people don't talk about is that's when they converted, do the research, all allodial titles and aboriginal titles, not indigenous titles, aboriginal titles to mortgages and deeds. 1913, that's the conversion. It lasted up until roughly 1925. Now, the 1913 operations paralleled Noble Drawley's claim to the right of a state for them to hold true to the treaties and obligations. That was the old Canaanite temple, 1913. Countermove. Creature from Jekyll Island. And so they converted all Aboriginal titles, which is the superior title. That's the real claim. Now, and this is again, Dr. G, where for themselves, they started creating like land patents and things like that and land grants to still steal the land from us. when our position is Aboriginal title, superior to all of that. Because when it all boils down, only the Aboriginal titles will stand when everything collapses. That's why they don't teach it. Back to what are we doing? When you talked earlier, you said, I'm gonna give a civic class. Start doing some civics. The more you talk about, see, if you talk, it gets people thinking. Then when they start doing research, they see the real politics. The deal is the people don't know what they're dealing with, Dr. G. Once you understand this, you understand the Trading with the Enemy Act. And then you understand the War Tax Act of 1917, the correlation of years, what its real function is, the Buck Act. You understand it all. Now, and so keep in mind, around 1925 in that area, what did Drew Ali do between 1925 and 1928? He was in communications with nations of the earth, trying to encourage the Europeans here to maintain their integrity and honor to the obligations of treaty, which I just read, because that's what their obligation is, and constitution. So what happened is it crashed the system. That's why a lot of people who understand the economics, some people will say amongst Europeans that Noble Drew Ali crashed the stock market in 1925. So you look at the record, look at the microfilm, look at the records, and you see that's when he established the old Moorish Temple of Science as a civic organization, because he had developed the people to civically to start understanding their lost estate. Because remember, all the people's heads are confused because people kept thinking it's religion. And the issue is the restoration of their estate. Then 1928, that's when he adopted that affidavit to protect the people's estates. Why? Because it crashed the bond system. So what did they do? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because remember, this is from 1913 to around 1925, the system lasted, then it crashed again. So 1925, they re-established it again, United States Corporation Company. That's those files I gave you from Florida. You know the files I gave you? 1925 United States, their registration, their reincorporation. I gave you copies. Remember, I made you copies of it.
I don't know. I've got a lot of stuff from you, so I don't know.
No, once I can get you locked in to pay attention to timeline and different political actions, things will start popping in your head, because you'll see things that most people don't pay attention to, because people are in vacuum thinking. They don't know how to look at century activities and tie them together. They don't have a detective mind. Most people don't have photographic memory. Our attention spans by design are short.
All right. I tend to see things, they link. I, get one thing and then I see the connection between that and something else.
Once you get the connections, you understand the politics, and then when they're trying to BS you with a whole bunch of other stuff, you see, you don't even let it bother you. You be looking at people around you and wonder how damn dumb can they damn be, for how long, how many generations, and the stuff is in their faces. You can see why these people have contempt for the people, because he has to know that some of them are just in denial for fear, not that they can't see it. And to get along, they rather go along with the politically correct and start making them kind of statements and pretending that they're helping their people. No different than the overseers start doing this civil rights stuff when they know that Eisenhower relinquished jurisdiction at Morocco in 54. They didn't dismiss the Constitution and consular venue. They relinquished jurisdiction because they can't change the Constitution. This is why, like, when you start doing a lot of law cases and you see Europeans were starting to make claims with UCCs and financial statements and everything, and then the magistrates would tell them, you can't use that Constitution as a defense. You're not a party to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've heard that here and there, and people don't understand that, well, he can't stop them from their constitutional rights. Yes, he can. They called themselves white people. With the Naturalization Act after Ulysses Grant, without a nationality, you can't make a claim of any damn estate. And the deal of it is the only ones that can make claim to the land is a allodial title, an aboriginal title, not anything that was legislated thereafter. Anything there that was thereafter is already superseded by aboriginal titles, i.e., Article 6, Constitution for the United States. All debts and contracts entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be binding against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. And all treaties made or which shall be made under this Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. Get over it. And so the heirs must be named and everybody's dancing around it. But guess what? While they're dancing, the system is collapsing.
Crashing, it's going down. Yes, collapsing.
It's unstoppable. Therefore, those who understand the real geopolitics will pull their ego in, pull their vanity in, stop spending their vouchers on frivolous things like expensive belts and pocketbooks and other stupid shit. We'll start getting back to the earth, set up trust, make their claims, and wait it out because it's going to collapse all around you. So now you're going to need all these people with all these emotional responses to have knowledge, because you're going to need people with knowledge to start running government. You're going to have to rebuild. You can't have people restoring the republic who don't know what the republic is.
That's right.
They think it's a democracy. They're going to get guillotined.
We need to get them to come out on Fourth Fridays to our living in private class. They need to get some alternatives. So I know we love having you there, but we do have an awesome instructor that comes from DC, especially if people are looking to do something other. What they do, because he realizes that how useless the fiat is, they give it away. So
this is the whole point. Yeah, but this is the point that I'm making to you, Dr. J.
Yeah.
That's applying the knowledge.
Okay.
Now, what we're doing is we're putting the basic erudition in that's missing, because remember this: you can have intelligent and goodwill brothers and sisters like themselves, me or you or anyone else, that can say to people they need to do trust, they need to buy some silver, different things like that, and they'll be thinking it's your opinion, not understanding they're in danger.
Right.
Do you understand? And they'll be moving on their training basis. And remember, their training bases are whether they believe things or not knowing things. They don't move on knowledge. They move on whether they believe things or not.
Emotions.
Right? They will be called under war powers when martial law comes. They will be the kind of people marching down the street talking about their rights and get mowed down, not knowing they shouldn't be there. Do you think they have rights that don't rest with them? See, this is what's happening. This is what's happening with the bond system. You have what is known as a derivative system, which is multi-fractionalized claims on the same bond systems that ultimately lead back to gold that ain't there. And the people are thinking about all these instrumentalities, paper gold that they call it, that's crashing and that's accelerating, which is why they're having this problem now, while the Praetors going around talking about we're going to take over the Panama Canal, we're going to take over Canada and take a piece of Mexico, and talking like this, because they know they're trying to grab resources under Unum Sanctum, because no one's buying the bonds, which I told you would happen.
Yeah.
In other words, they're living it right now. It's here.
Right. We are seeing it.
What are they doing with all these people that think they have money? They're crashing their mortgage deed claims on all of those condos and mansions and all of the commercial buildings. They're not with the water, they're underwater. Then they're going to convert them for pennies on a dollar to try to save the corporation again, which is why Trump and Elon is not trying to fire individuals. They're firing departments.
Yeah.
It ain't personal. They're liquidating and people can't see it. They're not going to say to the people that they're liquidating. And it still won't be enough.
And they're also closing hospitals. I saw a TikTok video from a nurse that was standing outside her former place of employment that shut down. Well, it was in her backyard. She didn't say it, but it was Crozier Chester. The whole system went down. I met another nurse the other day that was her last day, a couple of days last week, and they shut down the whole hospital system because of the financial situation of the so-called owners. And that's the burn center of this tri-state area. Mm-hmm. They had a brother, I was told by the nurse, that showed up at the emergency. Somebody brought him by a car, been shot. Nobody there to take care of him. He bled out. So Crozier Chester's like right next door. Mm-hmm. And people from here go there. But a whole hospital system, not just there, but all the places that they're connected to.
Now, look what's happening to, so we're talking top shelf, Harvard as an example. What's it? 8.2 billion that they get. And that's only because that's one of the largest. They pulled it. All your major universities, what is it telling you that's on the way? So what we talked about years ago over the House of Reawakening Minds, they're going to have these people graduating with student debt, right?
That won't be forgiven.
Of jobs that won't exist.
And the debt won't be forgiven.
And if they did, they would already be obsolete when they graduate. Then they're going to what? Put them in slavery and take what they have and convert it. That back to what we talk about now. What you said earlier. As I'm talking now, you understand the reversioner.
Right. I said, I wasn't saying I was today years old. No, a couple of days when I found out when I was doing the study that you asked me to do that I am the reversioner.
You have to make the claim.
But every time you would say the reversioner, I was always like, oh, that's a statement that people need to make. They have to fill out.
That's the nature. It has to be the nature of a competent heir.
We are the reversioner.
Exactly. You're the heir. If the heirs don't speak up, they liquidate your estate. That's what they've been doing. And the deal of it is people who got a little bit conscious, start thinking about those two executive orders from Roosevelt and start arguing the birth certificate. And that ain't all that it is. The marriage certificate superseded it. It's just that they fractionalized it so much that it wasn't accepted anymore. Then the birth certificate was done to refund them again. That's the reorganization. In 1925 in Florida. That's when we did a class on that, and I showed you the paper.
Right. So the marriage certificate was the
eggs.
Right. So they had to get the eggs were in, all in the womb when all that was what they think came out the marriage, and then they specifically monetized
human trafficking. It ain't got nothing to do with what people think it does. Therefore, if the status is dead, the standing is dead. And this is what happens. No matter what is done in legal process under their jurisdiction, if you're not an heir for real, your claim is dead. Just like their claims are dead on the 14th Amendment. No matter how long the people accept it, it ain't law. It's color of law. Mm-hmm. Now, right now, at this moment, Dr. G, go to the ancient and modern jurisprudence, look up colored, read that, in conjunction with free white people. Now, read colored. We're tying these things together because remember, if the status is dead, the claim is dead. And this is back to where a lot of Europeans have been using different systems to try to claim their estates. And then when they perfect the processes, people keep talking about processes, and the magistrates tell them you can't use that constitution. As a defense, you're not a party.
Okay, ready? Right, colored. By common usage in America, this term in such phrases
read it slow so that people can discern everything that you're saying.
All right. Colored. By common usage in America, this term in such phrases as quote unquote colored persons, the quote unquote colored race, quote unquote colored men, and the like is used to designate Negroes or persons of the African race, including all persons of mixed blood descent descended from Negro ancestry. And then they give some legal cases here.
Give you case reference.
Yeah, case references, so that's what it says.
Keep on.
I don't need to read all the references, but where a state constitution provided for separate schools for the white and colored races, the term quote unquote white race was held to be limited to the Caucasian race, and the term quote unquote colored races to embrace all other races. It has also been held that there is no legal technical signification to the phrase quote unquote colored person, which the courts are bound judicially to know.
Read that again. That's very important. What you just read.
Okay, but where a state constitution provided for separate schools for the white and colored races, the term quote unquote white race was held to be limited to the Caucasian race, and the term quote unquote colored races to embrace all other races. It has also been held that there is no legal technical signification to the phrase quote unquote colored person, which the courts are bound judicially to know.
So therefore, that's a political jurisdiction. They don't have to recognize it because there's no science to it. They made it up to classify people under a jurisdiction that has no standing. That's why they call color law not law.
Colorable. Not law, it's colorable, yeah.
There you go. So what happens when our people start saying, oh, we people of color think they know what they're talking about? They have no standing at law.
Yeah. Well,
now you understand identity theft.
Yeah, the real identity theft. Yeah. And they have those words that they use that we like, as
those
cheat.
Are
like words like as cheat because they cheat.
There are civil liter mortuus terms.
Right.
It says term, and our people will say it's identity.
Mm-hmm.
because they can't read.
Yep.
Connotative linguistics. And all they got to do is get us to project it. That's a contract.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, listen, we have been on here for 3 hours. You are not going to look. Grand Sheikh is not going to get me. We packing a whole bunch into our one session a month, y'all. We'll be doing one session at the first Friday for just a little bit until Grand Sheikh gets all of his strength. Because this as much fire and fervor as he's showing you tonight, I know that is going to take his toll on him, because he looks like he's back at 100%. That we're not even seeing 100%. I don't know what's going to happen when he gets completely back to 100%. But and it doesn't look like he's had his dinner, because I know she brought it to him maybe about an hour ago. He tried to sneak some in and talk and be scholarly with food at the same time. We didn't intend to be candy. He eating candy, but I know she put your plate down there quite some time ago, and I want to be mindful of that. Too.
She can cook too.
Okay. So he's eating candy. I'm drinking like coffee with purpose that we actually have.
But Dr. J,
but we need to, yeah,
projection, because of the time factor.
Yes.
When these things that we
You're welcome, Sister Light.
when we point some of these things out and they're really studied, it kills the naivety, which is why certain things that over the years I heavily edited and put certain things out there, because if it's like this, what the people don't understand, if that status foundation is not fixed, everything else they do don't count.
Right.
And people think, and I comprehend it, and I understand that it can be frustrating. They be thinking, because they do these different processes that it makes standing. See, the standing is status, because remember what you have in the jurisdiction, in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, and territorial jurisdiction. Then you have your subcategories that comes under that, which is about 8 different points. And so the people have to know them, so that when they're receiving information in their mind, they can properly categorize it without having a discussion.
Absolutely.
People in government or who's controlling the estate already know what this is, because they've been colonizing you. They already know this stuff. They just don't talk about it. And so if you're trying to make a right of claim and you're controlled by their connotative linguistics and don't understand estate law, principle, and land, they're talking to you, looking at you cross-eyed.
You up Schitt's Creek. Look, like I say, you're on Schitt's Creek. You need to you out there with without a paddle. So you got to get your paddle together, which is your knowledge.
People be thinking they dissing you, which they are, but the real deal is they're not going to teach you how to decolonize.
Heck no.
Because they've got your estate on the stock market and got your body tied to it. Mm-hmm. But your body's hypothecated. Your estate is hypothecated. But that's why they can't own anything. That's why they're listed as a tenant forever.
Yeah. So
now before we go, I'm gonna throw this because I want everybody to look at what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. San Francisco, Philadelphia, Chicago, Miami. Now starting to happen in Houston, Texas. As the people ran from California to Nevada to Louisiana and Texas, running away from the other stuff, the conversion of a state, they hide it under this term, housing bubble.
Mm-hmm. About the verbiage.
Conversion of a state. And now, so what needs to be fixed? These people have to make reversion. They don't know the politics. They don't know civics. They don't know what to do. The corporate operatives pretending to be government are robbing them, and they're going to be looking to them to fix this thing when they're the problem. And because we're so slow to learn here, the nations are nationalizing all over the place while we're trying to do what? Teach our people civics that should have been with them 80 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Point that I'm making is, like I said the last time when we did our class before, the people don't know the trouble that they're in. What we're trying to do is get people to survive this crash. The phrase that they're going to go through and that we're all going through right now is worse than the Depression of 33. It just ain't hit them yet. And when it gets to a point, they're going to be shutting things down, shutting off grids, just like they did in Spain and Portugal. That wasn't no damn sunspot. They shut it down. Why? Because most of your bond systems come from Fleet Street. So they couldn't make any bond transfers, could they? They're crashing the system, Dr. G. And the people still don't see it. And they're going to steal these people's accounts and stretch it as long as they can and blame it on Russia and China. It's them. Fleet Street, England runs the court system here. The court system is not run from Washington. It's run from the Circle Church and Chancery, also known as the Crown. They think the Crown is the Queen. Crown is the barristers. They run the entire court system, judicial system at North America. That's why they promoted the 14th Amendment. That's why when you start talking constitutional enforcement like we were talking here, Article 3, Section 2, that's why they be put out there to try to dismiss it. They don't want you to pay attention to it. That's what was overthrown. They can't change the Constitution. Challenge anybody, not in a negative, but tell them for their own erudition. Pull up constitutional conventions and see when there was. Then anything that any so-called barrister tell you or any politician tell you that they relinquished or dismissed or neutralized any part of the Constitution, and you'll see that they're lying. Last Constitutional Convention was when George Washington was assigned to the palace. This is the reason why most of the people, even the people who are listening right now, don't know that George Washington was the 9th president. They think he was the first because they were miseducated. And it's just stuff as clear as that, whereas we can show you the documents and prove it. Right in the congressional record. But they know that these people ain't going to read. So they'll say, you want to hide something from these monkeys? Put it in a book. We got to get people past their emotions and their egos.
So that last one was 1787.
Yeah. Now,
May 25th.
When was George assigned? 1789.
Yeah.
Who was the first president?
The last and only official one was held in Philadelphia on May 25th to September 17th.
Republic?
Huh?
After the treaty. After the treaty was agreed to, and we set with the ordinance, 1786, 1787, who was the first president that and the only president to deal with the Great Seal, the only president that deal with the Great Seal, that's that pyramid that you see on the back of that note, John Hanson, 1781. These people don't even know their history. Now you understand why in the treaty book, Dr. G, I put George Washington's letter to the Sultan.
Yeah.
And that letter is also in this book. That's why our people don't really get good books. You understand what I'm saying to you? They don't know they don't know the history here.
Yeah, it exists. He was elected as the first president in the United States in Congress in some of the, like you said, 1781 under the Articles of Confederation, which was our first government, our first federal government.
Now let's go to Article 6 Constitution. It says what? All debts and contracts entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be binding against the United States. And then mentions the Confederation. So the Confederation is also the established law of the land. So see where our people haven't even been studying? So when in law, when they say Constitution, what are they talking? Articles of Confederation, the treaty that supersedes it, and the present day Constitution, all act together, which includes also the organic Declaration of Independence. All of them is looked at as one document. That's why people keep getting trapped and taken advantage of. Then Europeans say, well, you all are imbeciles, so pay me and I'll speak for you. You just shut up and let me represent you. Then soon they get frustrated and say something, then the magistrate say, shut the fuck up. I'm gonna lock you up. But judge, he don't know. You better shut up. And they charge him with contempt. Oh, they racist. No, because once you hire one of those Sadducees, you've already sold yourself to the court. And this is back for those who have your law books. Go look up leave in the law book and see what it says. And it'll amaze you. Once you hire a lawyer, you've given them jurisdiction because he's an officer of the court. He ain't presenting for you. He presents for the court because it's all run from Fleet Street, England. There you go. Have a good night. Love you all.
Listen, Grand Sheikh, thank you so much. I want to put up. Yeah, I want to make sure y'all know, because I know y'all get ready to go. But just to remind you that let me take this down. Y'all see that up there? Go to vitalhealthbot.com. And if you got some health problems or concerns, just put in there what you're dealing with, and you'll get a free analysis of what you need. Just free. It's free. And then if you really want something, you can call me, and I can direct you to my site. But we have some awesome herbal products in the spirit of our late doctor, Dr. Sabi, those kinds of herbs, but very, very affordable. Check us out. But this bot right here is really, really great for just putting your information in, what your issues you're dealing with or what your concerns are, and it'll tell you what you need. Yep. So I just want to make sure you know that exists. But I wanted to make sure that we know what's coming up on the fourth Friday. Here it is. Okay. Yeah. So the fourth Friday, which is Friday, May 23rd, 2025, 7 p.m. Eastern, doors open at 6:30. Course teaching Lady J, teaching us how to live in private. I'm your host, and I'll probably speak about something just to open up. And, there's a lot of questions. Like last time, Grand Sheikh, there were so many questions asked. They couldn't even get into the part they had intended to get in. We had folks from all the way as far as Florida who came to be here, and a couple of young adults who came, a couple teenage ladies, young ladies that are very astute, homeschooled, and they came and they really got a lot out of the class. So y'all come on the fourth Friday and be with us. And also, I'm going to, as Grand Sheikh said, starting next week, I'm going to be, Grand Sheikh, doing a sort of an introductory civics class at the house. I hope some folks will come out now. 6:30 p.m.
I'll give you some bullet points to make.
Well, you don't have to give them to me now. Don't give them to me now.
Real quick, what I gave you.
We can get out of here.
No,
we can talk offline about that.
Because whether you like it or not, you are sort of like by default a national secretary, because they're going to be asking, they're going to be calling, hey, Dr. J,
They can't get to you.
my sandwiches, and you know, I get more sandwiches, and the ones with the jelly on it. And you say, well, I don't know. Yes, you do. And what I'm saying to you, the reason when we talked, and the reason why I directed you to those files is so that a lot of minutia unnecessary doesn't bleed in and kill the time for lack of information. Because that's the foundation of the politics here in a synopsis.
Right.
Now, and so when you're dealing with people, politicians and others who already know this, they ain't going to talk to you. Because remember, they're all Masons and Eastern Stars. They're not going to talk to you directly like this at all. And definitely not publicly. But when they know that you know what's up, they stop trying to bullshit you. They may bullshit someone else, but they stop bullshitting you. But this is the point that I'm making, Dr. G.
Yeah.
The people who've been coming to the House of Reawakening Minds and to all office hours, they come there because ultimately they have learned over the years that we actually give them real reference points that step outside of the emotions or bias and will actually lead to the reality. And what I'm saying to you, they really need to become competent, not because we say so, because that's the political reality. They're not alarmed only because they don't know. Not unlike a deer that don't know them headlights is a car. And rather than jump across the street, they're staring at it.
Wow. I appreciate that. I'm gonna do my best.
Anyway.
And somebody said, where at Dr. G? It's gonna be I'm gonna put this up. It's at the same place that this class is, which is on the fourth Friday, 602 Vanderbilt Avenue, Wilmington, Delaware, 19802. So it'll be at 6:30 to 8. Maybe it goes longer if we asking questions and so forth. I'll try to have handouts and things for you so that you don't go away empty-handed, but it'll be next Friday, and I'll be doing that I'll have to do a flyer for it, but doing it on the second Fridays of the month. And let me see. Yeah. And let me see. So I'm giving a shameless plug. If you have anybody out there that I'm giving away free product, y'all. If you see up here, these are coffees. If you're a coffee drinker, and it's only one day left. So if you read that right there, it says simply visit. That's that Vital Health bot thing I told you. Enter your wellness concerns, receive free personalized supplement recommendations, then text or DM me your name and your number, email address to my number up here to be entered. I'm extended it one day because it's supposed to be over at 11:59 tonight. But if you text me, I'm going to be giving away a full-size product, maybe one of these coffees. And these are like 50 serving coffees that we have. And I call them coffees, Grand Sheikh with purpose. If you drink coffee, the one on the far left is called Thermo Cafe, which I'm holding in my hands. And this coffee actually, Grand Sheikh, is for the helps with the brain and so forth with your thoughts. And it contains L-carnitine, guarana, and green tea. So it really helps. Has the adaptogens. The one in the middle is our Neuro Cafe. So if you're having brain fog and some issues like this coffee has Ganoderma mushroom, ginseng, and some vitamins, natural vitamins that you need for that. And if you're having problems in the love department, ladies and gentlemen, this particular one is called Our Love. And these are instant coffees. So they make a 12-ounce cup, or you can make it a little smaller cup if you want your coffee stronger. But you just hot water or either cold almond milk, and you can make it a latte. But this one is called Love Cafe. It contains Tonkat Ali. Some of you guys know about that. Tonkat Ali, maca root, and L-arginine, and it helps you with your libido. It helps you with your hormones. It helps you with your, your love life. Getting your.
Are you being politically correct?
Will it help you get it? This is called Love Cafe for a reason. It's our highest. It's our highest selling coffee. But we have a lot of We have a lot of other coffees, but I want to give away to three people, free coffee. So please pay attention to what it says up there. Go to the bot. Let me, Sheikh, don't go anywhere. Go to the bot. Here we go. I'm gonna put it up again, right here. If you go to the bot and check out what it is that says you need, then you can get you can text me, and I'll give you I'll see who tomorrow who wins, and three people are going to get something, either coffee or one of our other herbal products. We have V Nitro is like a nitric oxide. It also helps with moving the blood through places, and we have stuff for your kidneys and for liver. I mean we have supplements. This is not, we're not promoting anything to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness. However, we have herbal supplements that will complement what it is that you are going through. But I want to give away so I want to give away 3 to somebody. So I'm expecting to see, don't call me, DM me, because I'm not going to answer the phone after we hang up from this. So don't call me, but do DM me, or
how you get this languages?
Send me a text. Yeah, send me a text or to that number 302-345-0500 after you've gone to the Vital Health Bot and checked out. And then at the bottom you'll see also, if you want to shop and buy something that it tells you that you need, then you can certainly do that. But let me see, I forgot what I'm doing. I wanted to put my link up here. There's my link. So if you see that you need like 4 or 5 things for what you put in there based on what you put in there. And Grand Sheikh, I have a new scanner that goes along with this, but I can only use it with people in person. And what that does is you put your finger in this particular scanner, sort of like what you see in the doctor's office when they do like a pulse like thing on your finger. I know it's downstairs, but it clicks on your finger. It runs a pulse through your finger, and it will evaluate 45 vital functions of your body and generate 120-page report on what's going on. You might think you know what's going on, but this literally generates 20-page report, tells you what's going on based on 45 points. And then it also will tell you what of our products or other products that you might want to add to your supplement regimen to assist you. So thank you all.
Doctor. You're always looking out for the people. I really respect you for that.
I try.
Yeah, but you be constantly, I'm really appreciate you, and I really love that nurturing matriarchal spirit. Because it's like you're like a sister mama. Make sure everybody all right.
Right, and I wouldn't recommend to anybody anything that I myself would do.
I know you do. Yeah, I know you be real. You don't push nothing that you don't do yourself.
I don't do myself. So and like I said, you and I, I'm with you for one more year with in the septuagenarians. I just entered into the 70s, and you got going out at the beginning of next year. But while we both step to, I think we're called septuagenarians. There's certain things that will help you. I did a presentation last week called Get Your Wealth Together. And the wealth is your health. And even though all these things are going on and things that could stress you and stuff, and got your kidneys working overtime, or your brain working overtime.
They're attacking the people.
Right. Or the stuff, the heavy metals. We have a detox tea that's the bomb that will work to help clean out all of the heavy metals and junk, but it won't make you have to be tied to the bathroom stuff. So I just want to help folks, do what I'm doing and feel better. So and there are solutions out there to assist. Like I said, this is not a claim of medical to diagnose, treat, or cure anything, but it's assistance to help you make informed choices and decisions about your wellness regimen. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Please, if you haven't on your way out, please like, and you can still share this video because they can see the replay. All right. And if you want to win a product, you're going to have to go right after we hang up and check out you'll be amazed. Like you're going to put I got this, I got that. It's all within, it's like an AI thing, and it's going to say boom. And within a minute, it's going to tell you all the things that you need to do. And even if it's something we don't have, it's going to tell you may need that for this. And I love the way that works. So do that. Send me a DM if you want to win something, because I'm really going to give it away. Yeah, do that. And Grand Sheikh, we look good on it. Let me slide over here. Yeah, we look kind of good on the sides of the coffee. and tell Grand Sheikh, thank you. So I thank her so much for allowing you to be on this long. We had almost 3 hours and 30 minutes, but time passes when you're having fun. And we got a great time. A lot of what I researched, we didn't talk about, but it's something we could do, the next time, because I'm sure
we got to go refined. But what I was seeking from, even when I direct you to those things, because what you recognize, this is what I'm saying to you. Half the questions that people will ask, they will already be answered. They'll recognize the questions are generated from trying to understand concept.
Right.
Because they're not familiar with that everything operates on estate, status, and trust. Everything.
Right.
In the political realm. And when you step out your door, and even before you step out the door, it's jurisdiction.
Right.
Jurisdiction. Claim. Jurisdiction. So if they understand the concepts by understanding civic structure, they answer it themselves. And what you see people keep trying to do, if you see the thing that attracts a lot of people to these venues, they, whether consciously or unconsciously, they're trying to claim their estate.
Right.
And they're trying to jump to it without understanding the rules, which will cause failure.
And let's end with this. Because I did my little research, so I'm going to share this right quick. With understanding jurisdiction, as Grand Sheikh says, jurisdiction is the power to an authority to act and to do. And there's three primary types of jurisdiction that we have to know. Subject matter jurisdiction, and that's the authority over the type of issue. Contracts, criminal, maritime, equity.
That's this physical natural being, sentient man or woman.
Then there's
subject matter.
Territorial jurisdiction, authority over the geographical area or land or space.
That would be territorial jurisdiction.
Right. And then there's personal or in persona jurisdiction, authority over the person.
That's first.
So are you operating as a natural being or as a corporate fiction, all caps? So those are the three key
that would also include that also includes political allegiances, Dr. G.
Okay.
That's why you can't be a 14th Amendment and make the claim. You can do perfect paper claims, know the history, and lose it claiming under 14th Amendment.
Let me say this. At the class last week, Teach told us about a brother that was in their courts, and I don't know what the subject matter was, but it was at the courts, was kind of winning, but he said, he was just standing on the square that he was not in their jurisdiction. When a break, I think he said, came and they all went out, they recessed the court. This brother went across the street from the courthouse and took funds fiat out of a ATM machine, and they saw him do it. And when he came back in the court and he was still claiming, he wasn't in their jurisdiction, they brought up the fact, did you go to the ATM across this, and we're doing the break, and it messed up his whole case. Something as simple as that.
Now, this is the whole point. Now, this is back to understanding jurisdiction. Jurisdiction and averment of jurisdiction, even a mandamus, can be invoked prior, present, future. They were testing him.
Yeah.
See, this is why, and this is back to, you can do everything right. And if your standing is dead, your claim is dead.
Yeah.
Now, here's the point. All you had to do was, this is why you don't call it money. If you called it money, then you failed.
Right.
Says, Now,
did you take money out?
because you, that magistrate, is operating as an administrative clerk, because we're under occupation. I went across the street and got a voucher to make a transfer routing claim on resource on the Sister QV Trust. I didn't get any money. You know it, and I know it too. He would have killed it. That's how you reverse it. That's why I keep telling people, back to the connotation, even not knowing that just you jumped in the shit pool, you can jump back out. You might need some perfume, but you can jump back out the shit pool.
Okay, y'all. We going for real now. Grand Sheikh, thank you. I love you.
Right.
And I appreciate you. And I know we'll be talking. We'll be talking soon, y'all.
I just want to remind you how important why I told you to read the people that are going to be speaking, have them read them things thoroughly, mark off bullet points. As the questions come, you'll answer them, because remember, these are the position that all these politicians already have. Remember, those are abstracts from their documents.
Right.
You know, like I'll expand on a research level, you know, to make an ancillary adaptation, because they will talk vaguely. So I'll clarify it. But the body content of the concepts are in all those documents. That's why I keep telling people, read the Travacant letter, read the Clearfield Doctrine, read the Reversioner. You know, Wiggum, you got the politics. They're not, and understand, they're not going to entertain you publicly and expose themselves, but they know that you understand the system. They can't gaslight you. So we have to be patient with ourselves, because this is what happens, Dr. G. You can give people stuff, they'll read 2 lines and don't read the rest.
Right.
And the concepts are there. No different than, and I'm going to say this and let you go.
Okay.
And just reminding you, even in our conversation as we're going along, and I remind you of the registration of the reincorporation of the United States in 1925. And I remind you, I gave you the documents, and then you was trying to think, you know, because we be doing so much stuff. But I remind you, those are funded. Once the people have that, they can't BS them no more.
Right. They know. They can see it's a corporation.
Yeah, it's a corporation. There's Sears telling you you can't do sandwiches on Thursdays and then taxing you.
Right.
Now, that's the Clearfield Doctrine. Because basically what them presenters for the bank was saying to them without saying it, look, y'all assholes, we know that you ain't no different than Sears. You do that to them dumb niggers and them poor people of color, but you ain't going to put that on us. That's the nature of the Clearfield Doctrine. Why? Because when they incorporated and overthrew the Republic, they lost their sovereign authority. That's why you can sue them in their private and professional status. That's why I keep telling people it's important to understand the concept.
Okay. All right. We're going to go. Somebody's, look, I will let you go. Somebody's in here trying to sell coffee over my coffee. Well, whatever, y'all. But anyhow.
Love you, Dr.
Yeah, let me, y'all, if you want to get a sample, you know, do what I ask. Is our coffees have adaptogens, and I love you all. I love Grand Sheikh. I'm glad to see you doing better, and we are leaving this place.
Islam,
Grand Sheikh.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say I'm reawakening minds. To know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine.